and generally with more cloud around and showery outbreaks of rain as that low pressure develops across the UK. It means temperatures won't be as low. We'll see generally minimum temperatures of 4 to 7 degrees. So it does mean a chilly start to Sunday. Rather cloudy though, showery outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain could be heavy at times as it pushes northwards across the country. Cooler and more unsettled across Scotland after almost a week of pure sunshine here. And Northern Ireland generally dry with some showers here, and temperatures generally feeling a little bit cooler. Cold day into the beginning of the new working week, temperatures below average Monday and Tuesday.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel. Happy Friday and welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, we'll bring you full reaction to the sensational resignation of Justice Secretary and Deputy PM Dominic Raab. Was Raab robbed? It's a number 10 in crisis special. Is Raab's departure at the behest of civil servants an attack on Brexit and the democratic will of the people? Plus, should we write King Charles a blank cheque for the coronation? Do we really want a budget coronation? I don't think so. And as a report suggests, they may reduce the value of your home. Are conservatories just a bit naff? Homes Under the Hammer star Martin Roberts is up shortly. So big guests, big stories and big opinions on a Friday night. Feisty debate and plenty of laughs along the way. A busy 3 hours to come. First, the headlines. He's with me all night, Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's 8:08. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Dominic Raab has blamed activists within the civil service for his downfall. The Deputy Prime Minister resigned earlier after an investigation upheld some of the bullying allegations made against him. It said he had behaved in an aggressive and intimidating manner. He says a small minority of civil servants are effectively trying to block the government.
The vast majority of civil servants are fabulous. We can't achieve what we want in government without our officials. But the risk is a small cabal can block important reforms if hurt feelings because poor work or inadequate work is pulled up, or because more questions are asked than they feel comfortable with. And if ministers back off driving change forward, we won't be doing our job, which is, of course, not to serve civil servants and civil service, as important, as valuable as they are, but is to serve.
Well, meanwhile, Oliver Dowden has replaced Dominic Raab as the new Deputy Prime Minister. He will also remain in his role as Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. And Alex Chalk takes over as the new Justice Secretary, making him the 11th person appointed in that role since 2010. The Law Society has warned that he inherits an even worse justice crisis than any of his recent predecessors. Labour's Shadow Justice Secretary, meanwhile, Steve Reid, has attacked Dominic Raab's record in office, accusing him of leaving the criminal justice system in tatters, with Sir Keir Starmer criticising the Prime Minister over what he's called indecision and weakness in allowing Mr Raab to resign. In other news this evening, the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says he'll pursue legal action to ask the courts to declare the Royal College of Nurses' upcoming strike unlawful. The RCN has planned industrial action from the 30th of April to the 2nd of May. NHS employers say the mandate for strike action expires on May the 1st. Pat Cullen, the RCN General Secretary, has described it as a nakedly political move from a bullying government. The CBI's future is in doubt as it suspends all policy and membership activity until an extraordinary general meeting in the summer following allegations of sexual misconduct against staff. Dozens of firms have ended their relationship with the trade body, including John Lewis, NatWest, Jaguar Land Rover and BT. Tesco and Marks and Spencer's are among those suspending their membership with the crisis-hit organisation. The CBI says it shares the shock and revulsion over the allegations of rape made by women against staff. The Home Secretary's announced a number of amendments to the illegal migration bill to make it more difficult for domestic and international courts to block deportations. The Home Office says those arriving by unauthorised routes that are not at risk of death, persecution, torture or degrading treatment will be deported. The appeals will then be heard remotely. Suella Braverman says the amendments will help prevent last-minute bogus asylum claims. On TV, online, DAB and TuneIn Radio, this is GB News. But now, it's time for Mark Dolan Tonight.
Was Raab robbed? It's a Number 10 in Crisis special. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. We'll be reacting to the spectacular departure of the Deputy PM, Dominic Raab, and should we write King Charles a blank cheque for the coronation? Do we really want a budget affair? Plus, as a report suggests they may reduce the value of your home, are conservatories just a bit naff? Homes Under the Hammer star Martin Roberts joins us shortly. In My Big Opinion, we'll bring you full reaction to the resignation of Dominic Raab. Is his departure at the behest of civil servants an attack on Brexit and the democratic will of the people? That's My Big Opinion. I'm not pulling my punches. That's coming at 9. My Mark Meets guest is one of the most recognised actors on TV, star of Allo Allo, Red Dwarf, Emmerdale, and of course, Coronation Street. Ken Morley. Is political correctness killing TV? I'll be asking the big man. And in my take at 10, speaking of PC, woke nutters want to get rid of the Man United and Man City badges because of alleged links to slavery. My reaction. Plus your emails, even the spicy ones, mark at gbnews.uk. Lots to get through. Let's start with this. You won't want to miss my big opinion at 9, but we kick off with the news that top cabinet minister and key Rishi Sunak ally Dominic Raab has resigned after he was found to have bullied staff members whilst working as a cabinet minister across several different departments. A report from independent investigator Adam Tolley said that 2 complaints against him had been upheld, concluding that the Deputy PM and Justice Secretary had acted in a way which was intimidating and had been unreasonably and persistently aggressive in meetings. Now, the findings also said that his conduct involved an abuse or misuse of power in a way that undermines or humiliates. Harsh words, but fighting back both on GBNews and in his resignation letter, Dominic Raab took issue with the report, calling the inquiry flawed and claiming the conclusions set a dangerous precedent for the conduct of good government. So, who to believe? This story is the topic of my big opinion at 9. But first, let's get the view of Rupert Lowe and Neil Parish. Of course, Rupert Lowe, former Brexit Party MEP, and, of course, entrepreneur, football club owner, chairman of Southampton FC back in the day, and ex-Conservative MP Neil Parish. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Rupert, let me start with you. Your reaction to the departure of Dominic Raab. Was Raab robbed?
In my opinion, this is a very serious, if you like, letdown of the British people. I mean, Dominic Raab, I think, has been incredibly dignified. I've read his resignation letter. I've watched 1 or 2 of his interviews, and I think clearly he is acting with dignity. I think much of what he says is spot on. I mean, when he says that in setting the threshold for this inquiry so low, the inquiry has set a dangerous precedent. Well, we don't know the terms of reference that Adam Tolley was given. That hasn't actually been published, but it does seem to have been a very low hurdle. There was nothing in what Tolley found to suggest that some of the things that the BBC were crowing about, throwing, I think, tomatoes and various other things at people, none of that was found to be true. And ultimately, he is the elected minister who is supposed to be holding the civil service to account. And as Maggie said, Mark, in the old days when we had sensible, efficient and very, very, if you like, long-headed leadership, she said, advisors advise, but ministers decide. And at the end of the day, I mean, Raab has made some pretty serious accusations about what some of his civil service support have been doing, and that needs to be looked into. But in my experience of dealing with government now, nothing works. We've got a raft of overpaid civil servants on huge salaries, big pensions. You try getting a civil servant at before 9:30 in the morning or after 4 o'clock, you've got no chance. You try engaging with HMRC, you can never get hold of them. They expect you to respond within a given time. They basically follow their own deadlines. It's the same with planning, the passport office, the NHS. You can roll through the entire apparatus of government and nothing is working. So I think this is very serious. I am just waiting. I mean, we all know the British people are very slow to respond, but Middle England needs to take heed from this. And I'm just waiting, Mark, for the volcano to erupt. I mean, we always say Britons are slow to respond. My God, they need to respond soon because this was their elected representative. And he's basically been hunted down by a bunch of dumbly insolent civil servants who clearly colluded to bring a series of accusations against him. And I'll tell you something, if some of the stuff he's been accused of, in a private company, the difference between me and him is I own most of the businesses that I run. And I can tell you if people don't perform, you have to basically ensure they understand where they're not performing and how to perform. There's no necessity to be rude, but they've got to be told. And if they're not performing, they've got to be told why. And frankly, if the ministers can't hold the civil service, which is now far too bloated and far too big to account, then ultimately the British people are going to watch the entire country self-immolate and destroy itself. So we've got to have a radical solution soon.
Neil Parish, these allegations wouldn't pass muster in a court of law, would they?
I don't think they would. I think that the problem is that Dominic Raab is very hardworking, very direct, probably not the best bedside manner in the world. I think he'd be the first probably to admit that, and really is tough. I think the problem is that there are many, many good civil servants out there, but I think the problem is what you don't want is the civil service running the government. It has to be the government actually making the decisions. So I think it's a really difficult one. I think the problem that Dominic Raab has is naturally he's said all along if any of the allegations were found to be, proven, then he would resign. So therefore he has done that. I think also if you look into the news, you'll see that many of the MPs that have worked with him as PPSs have actually said he was good to work for. So I think there's sort of two sides to this story, and I also think that we if you've got an elected government, you do actually need to be sure that that government can govern, and it doesn't matter whether it's a government on the right or a government on the left. If it's democratically elected, it is right that the civil service work with the government in order to deliver those policies. Now, I think you could claim that Dominic Raab, is hugely passionate. He was hugely passionate about Brexit. I wasn't a Brexiteer, but, I very much actually respect the fact of what he drove. Did he overdo it? That we will never know. And I think we've got to be careful, like I said, not to be too run by the civil servants. But I think what we also mustn't do is say that all civil servants don't do a good job, because many do. And I think let's try and get it back on equilibrium. And I think Dominic Raab will be better off now, actually, if I could be so bold to advise him on his political career, it's probably better to go more quietly and then come back again than it is to make too much fuss, because I tell you what, colleagues will soon row away if that happens. That's the nature of politics, which I found only too well, Mark.
Well, GB News got the exclusive. This is Dominic Raab speaking to one of our reporters. Take a listen.
I don't think it is for me to define it, but look, I'm very confident that I didn't behave in a bullying way. Most of these allegations were dismissed out of hand, and I think people watching this will be surprised that in scrutinising civil servants, in making sure that millions of pounds of taxpayers' money is not squandered, being able to pull very senior civil servants, not junior members of staff, up and say, look, I don't have the basic information to decide this. That was one of the things on which I was found to have been bullying because I defended someone, or because I said in relation to human rights reform, to get more foreign national offenders removed from this country, to strengthen free speech, I said I thought the department were being obstructive.
Now, Rupert, I'll come back to you in just a moment. Neil Parish, you've sat on the Conservative back benches. You know Dominic Raab intimately well. Is he a bully, and has he ever thrown tomatoes at you?
No, he's thrown nothing at me. He's always been very direct with me. And like I said, he's a guy that you have a straight answer from. He doesn't wrap
things up. Is he a psycho? Is he a psycho?
No, he's not a psycho, but I think, like I said, what he is very determined to do his ministerial role, make sure that government policy is pushed through. And is he overzealous sometimes? Possibly he is, and I think there's a balance to be struck here. I think that he should be given a hearing, and I think he should come back in the future. But he's resigned now, and I think best to sort of draw a line under this and move on. But I think what we've got to be careful of in the future is that government ministers can actually pursue government policy. The civil servants are there, whatever party's in power, to actually help them deliver this. And I think I think all sides in a way need to learn from this, because I think the mistakes don't all lie with Dominic Raab.
Neil, before I get my final question to Rupert, Dominic Raab will not re-enter the cabinet this side of an election, will he? But should Rishi Sunak win the next election, he'll be returning to high office. It's just a matter of time.
I think that is the case. He will have probably quite a big fight at the general election with Dominic Raab, because his seat, as you probably know, is quite a difficult one. Yeah. We've already got the Liberal Democrats there, the leader there today, I noticed. So it just shows that Dominic Raab's a fighter, and I suspect he will come back, and I suspect this is not the last we've seen of Dominic Raab.
Neil, I look forward to that trip down to your farm, by the way. Rupert Lowe, let me finally put this to you. You've had a very successful career as an entrepreneur and, of course, as the chairman of Southampton FC, and you presided over lots of glory for that great club. Do you think that there is a conflation now, a confusion between a tough boss and an abusive one?
Well, my view, Mark, is quite simple. I think we're living in a reverse Darwinist society where QE has allowed it. Basically, what it's done is it's made the country soft. There's no way we could have done what we did in 2009 without QE. There's no way we could have locked down without QE. I mean, QE is basically a fraud. It's the
and you mean, just for my viewers and listeners, quantitative easing, the printing of money?
It's the pure printing of money, Mark. It's not a reflection of a productive economy. And we're okay as long as the Asian nations, who are now the workhorses of the world, continue to accept our fiat currency, which is now a piece of paper no longer backed by gold. And what it's done is it's made the country soft. So it's not just in government. I mean, personally, I think the entire Westminster establishment is a cesspit. I mean, Labour, God help us if Keir Starmer and his merry mob of ministers and whoever else he decides to appoint gets in. I mean, this is about the big corporates. It's about, I mean, local government is just, and Neil's very, very polite about them. The fact of the matter is I deal with them every day. You try dealing with the planning department now. I mean, they change their staff every 5 minutes. They get younger and younger. They basically they use no common sense whatsoever. It's all done by basically, following the letter of the law. And, the country used to operate. That's why our constitution is not written. It's because ultimately you've got to have some flexibility in the way that a country operates. And I think we've got to have a complete clear out of the system. And that goes for, I'm afraid, Neil, that goes for MPs. I think the House of Commons is now an extremely weak gene pool. It's been destroyed by Cameron and Blair's selection policies and all the other nonsense that goes with woke Britain today. And sooner or later, I think we're going to have a major external shock. I mean, whether we end up with a war, which I think is highly likely, we seem to be doing our best to create one, or not. There's going to be food shortages. Like Neil, I'm a farmer. You're very welcome to come and visit my farm whenever you want, Mark. We have Fergal O'Brien training on the farm. Everybody in the real economy does their best to create wealth and create employment and actually do real things. Westminster is just a talking shop, and you watch it. And I tell you something else. I'm disappointed in Rishi Sunak. I actually think if Neil's right about Raab, and I've met Raab, I think Raab's, if he's passionate, great. That's what we want from government ministers. We don't want wet rags who toe the line and do what they're told. We actually want people who are going to make a change. But so Sunak, if he believes in his man, stand up for him.
Yeah, and that's a very fair point. That is something.
Does, Mark.
Indeed.
These people are beneath contempt, most of them. And
there you go.
I was a Tory. I stood for the referendum party in 97 because they were going to give away the pound. I stood for vote leave. And by the way, Neil, you or I may disagree on Brexit, but the British people voted to leave the EU. They were given a very simple vote. It's not about whether you agree with it or not. It's what the British people told the government to do.
There you go. Truth bombs aplenty. Rupert Lowe, thank you so much for the invitation to your farm as well, and also a brilliant conversation. Thanks to Neil Parish. Your reaction, Mark at gbnews.uk. Next up, we're going to talk about the Coronation. Do we want a cut-price Coronation? We'll discuss that next with the esteemed former BBC correspondent, the one and the only Michael Cole.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel. You won't believe anything I do next, will you? Welcome back. It's live telly, folks. This is GB News, and boy, what a busy show we've got for you. 3 hours of your opinion, including my big opinion, by the way. Was Raab robbed? Is a question I'll be asking in my big opinion and 9 with my top pundits. But let's talk now about the King. The coronation of King Charles III, a once-in-a-generation event, is just a couple of weeks away, and we are bringing you wall-to-wall coverage. Mark Dolan tonight will be down at the palace on the eve of the coronation. That's on Friday the 5th, and of course on the big day, the 6th. All the top names, Tom Bower, Kinsey Schofield, and many others. But let's talk about this special occasion. The pomp and ceremony will be watched by millions around the world, and it will undoubtedly be a day to remember. But is King Charles right to rein in the cost of this particular coronation? We've heard about a guest list which excludes Sarah Ferguson, the ex-wife of Prince Andrew, and 2 of the Queen's former bridesmaids. So is Charles right to be doing the coronation on the cheap? To reflect on this is former BBC royal correspondent and former advisor and spokesman for Mohammed Al-Fayed, Michael Cole. Hello, Michael.
Good evening. And Mark, I think I'm one of the many others who'll be with you. I'll actually be with you on coronation night. You probably don't know that, but that's been fixed already.
Well, I was hoping we'd confirmed your signature, so that's the best news ever. Michael, we can't wait to have your wise counsel on the big day. What are your thoughts about the forthcoming coronation? Are you concerned about the size of the guest list, the length of the royal procession, and some of the other economies that seem to be being made?
You know, it's a little bit too early to start talking about Charles the Wise, but this is a seriously good decision by the new king. These are constrained economic times. People are cutting back or they're cutting down. And we will never, ever again see, and I think it's a good thing, 25 to 30 members of the royal family on the Buckingham Palace balcony. I think the king here may be consciously or unconsciously channeling his grandfather, King George VI, the king who led us through World War II and the austerity that followed. And he said on one occasion that the royal family was best when it was, quotes, just us 4, by which he meant himself, Queen Elizabeth, and the 2 princes, Princesses Elizabeth and Margaret. And I think that's coming through. So King Charles is concentrating, and quite rightly, on the direct line of succession, which, of course, after himself is the heir apparent is Prince William, who is now the Prince of Wales, and then it goes Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and then Prince Louis, a straight line down. I think that's very good. And also the other economies and the other changes are also good. The coronation service itself, the ritual, will be 1 hour shorter, 2 hours instead of 3, as it was in 1953 when his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, was crowned. And also, I don't know how they did this, Mark, but they got 8,000 people in Westminster Abbey last time. There must have been a royal shoehorn with jewels on it or something, because there'll be 2,000, just over 2,000 people, and all the right people were there. Last time, every single member of the peerage, from dukes down to baronets, were invited. They were all invited. They all went in their robes and their coronets. And this was a rather nice little wrinkle, that they were all allowed afterwards to buy the seat they'd sat in. And this was a way of defraying the cost in 1953. And most of these peers bought their chairs. Rather nice blue in velvet. I think they were about £5, which is probably the equivalent of about £65 now. But that's what happened. So I think what the king is doing, his instinct is right. And I think it's in tune with the times. And I think people will applaud it. Also, he's cut down the length of the procession. It's going to be only a third of the length. In 1953, the Queen bounced all the way around the West End in the Gold State coach, which apparently is very uncomfortable, twice. That was in order that 3 million people lining the streets could see her. This time, it's going to be quite a short journey up the Mall and down Whitehall and Parliament Street, around Parliament Square. The last time, the Queen went up Park Lane, Oxford Street, down Regent Street, Trafalgar Square, Northumberland Avenue, and into the Embankment before she got back to Westminster. And on the corner of the Embankment and Northumberland Avenue was Children's Corner, and that was the loudest cheer of all.
Do you think there may be concerns about disruption from eco-protesters, the likes of Just Stop Oil?
Well, I suppose these people have got no conscience. They're one-issue zealots, and they'll do whatever they think is right. Of course, it's completely wrong. This is the most important moment for this country, let alone the monarchy, in the last 70 years. This is central to our life. The people who are lucky enough to live in a constitutional monarchy, which we do, and enjoy those freedoms. Of course, those freedoms include the freedom of speech and the freedom of assembly, and I would be the last person to interfere with those. I'm an upholder of free speech, as indeed are you, brilliantly every night of the week. So we wouldn't stop them doing that. We wouldn't stop them doing that. I just hope that they are well-behaved, that they are peaceful, and they are law-abiding. But you know something, Mark? Stony silence is one of the most effective ways to convey disapproval. When Emperor Hirohito came here on a state visit, those poor men, those valiant men who'd survived the Far East prison camps, those that were left, they just turned their back on him and stood silently. And I'll tell you, that was emotional. That was incredible. And I think these people should think about themselves. They obviously don't care about their public image. They probably glory in the fact that people loathe them and what they do. But the sense has gone out of the window when you try and talk to these people. We're all in the same boat, but we don't do what they do.
Is the absence of President Joe Biden unfortunate or a snub?
Not anything of the sort. President Eisenhower did not come to the coronation in 1953. And in more recent times, when Princess Diana and Prince Charles married at St. Paul's Cathedral in 1981, the president didn't come, President Reagan didn't come, but his wife, Nancy, charming woman, I've met her, she came, and guess what? She was escorted everywhere in those days by Prince Andrew, who, of course, was living in the glory of having been in the Falklands and coming back as a hero with the red rose between his teeth, and he was cheered to the echo. Those were different times. So there's no snub involved in that at all, and I'm sure the king would never have thought of it. And I believe that President Biden rang him and explained to him. But that's not how it works. I mean, they're trying to get a quart into a pint pot, 2,000 people. And the king is rightly involved. Winners of the BEM, the British Empire Medal, they are the lowest rank of honours winners, but they're the sort of people in the neighbourhoods, the people who do the good things, the people that Rupert Lowe was talking about, who actually deliver and do things. So he's made room for them, he's made room for the servicemen, and he's made room for the ordinary people who are very much part of this country, and also of all the religions. And you know, another great thing he's done, which I think is so good, the chief rabbi, Ephraim Mervis, he's going to have an Airbnb at Clarence House on the night before the coronation, because being Jewish, he and his wife cannot drive in a car on the Sabbath. And of course, the coronation is on Sabbath. So he's staying with the king, with his wife, so that they can then walk across to the Abbey in a very nice, casual way on Saturday morning. And I'm sure there's going to be somebody at Clarence House who's going to turn on the lights for them and turn them off again, because under what it says in the Torah, Jewish people are forbidden to make a fire on the Sabbath and do other things. So I think that's the king thinking outside the box, if you will, making people feel comfortable and trying to make this as inclusive as possible. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, you mentioned the people who've been excluded. I don't think for 1 second that the Duchess of York, Sarah, Duchess of York, will be at all put out that she hasn't got an invitation to the Abbey. She'll be going to the concert with a prominent position under the battlements of Windsor Castle on Sunday. And Pamela Mountbatten, who I've had the pleasure of meeting, she's getting very old now, but she's still sprightly. And her daughter, India Hicks, has made it clear that she's not at all upset. These are difficult decisions, but they're made every day. And I think the king has taken good control. I mean, I was never his greatest admirer, I can promise you that. But I think since he succeeded the Queen on September the 8th, when tragically she died, he hasn't put a foot wrong, and I think he's doing well.
It's official. Michael Cole will be one of our top royal pundits for our coronation celebrations. Michael, look forward to seeing you in the flesh, which, of course, is going to be a very special and joyful occasion. The biggest constitutional event of not just the year or the decade, but potentially the century. Michael, see you in a couple of weeks' time. Michael Cole, former BBC royal correspondent and former spokesman for Mohammed Al-Fayed. Coming up, Dial Dolan, the part of the show where I take your video calls. Tonight we'll be asking, is the era of the bully boss over? Plus, are conservatories just a bit naff? All of that next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. At 9 o'clock, it's My Big Opinion. I'll be dealing with the shocking departure of the remarkable and rather feisty Dominic Raab from high office. He has been our Deputy Prime Minister, Justice Secretary. He's gone. He has resigned. Has he taken one for the team? My reaction in My Big Opinion at 9. You won't want to miss it. Now, what should we do next? Is it Dial Dolan? OK, now the Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has indeed resigned. Dominic Raab has been accused of bullying after a report found him guilty. So it begs the question, if he is guilty of these allegations, which, by the way, is contested, including by the man himself, it begs a wider question. Is the era of the bully boss over? To discuss this, it's 3 brilliant viewers to Mark Dolan tonight. Sue from Cheshire, Adik from Kent, and Norma in Italy. Adik, welcome back to the show. Good to have you back on again. What do you think? Are we conflating a tough boss with a bullying boss? What's the difference?
Thank you, Mark. Nice to be back on your show. You're right. I think that's exactly what happens. In our society, the definition and the boundaries are very, very blurry. And if you become assertive, you have strong mind, you're very task-oriented, it may be seen that you're uncompassionate, you don't follow maybe other people's needs, and actually you don't necessarily have to be tough boss and not compassionate. It can come together. But in our culture today, as I'll probably will say very, very lame term now, the snowflake culture, that actually what happens. If you're very assertive, you sound to be very aggressive and working against maybe other people, which is it's a shame. Because in order to have a tough task, in order to complete a very strong assignment, government minister is one of the toughest jobs probably on earth. There is no way you can be smiley to everyone. How are you to think about what you did yesterday? Did you have any nice cake? Did you want to go for a coffee? It does not work like that. You have a task to complete, and that's what needs to be done. There is no other way. You don't look right, you don't look left, you just go straight ahead. And the responsibility of a boss is to make the task running. He has the country to run, to help the Prime Minister to do the most important job. And there is no way, if it's a nilly-willy, the task will not be done. And people sense weakness. And if you're a weak boss, your job will not be done. There'll be more excuses. Staff will find ways to do less job. And if you are very task-oriented, people will admire you. And it's completely okay sometimes to put the tough word, or not necessarily the most smiley, but you don't hit anyone. You just basically task-oriented. And if somebody does not do a good job, it's completely okay to say that. Obviously, you're not going to slap on the face, not slap on the wrist, but you're going to say it straight to the person, understanding what needs to be done. Nothing wrong with it. That's how companies run. That's good government done. I don't see a problem here, but I'm very disappointed that in our culture today, task-oriented, strong-minded, strong entrepreneurs seem to be bullies. I'm very disappointed. You're right here.
Sue, whether it's a government department, a football club, or a business, don't these organisations, these endeavours, need a bit of tough love, a bit of frank honesty, and a bit of strong leadership?
Well, yes, of course they do, or else nothing would ever get done. I think one of the problems nowadays is that people don't expect to be asked to do their job properly, and they get a bit uppity when they are asked to do it. And it amazes me that in the civil service, so it's virtually impossible to sack somebody, that people don't actually stand up for themselves if that's how they feel. Because from what I've seen, I don't think Dominic should have actually resigned anyway, because nothing is done amounts to bullying, in my view. I think if they were upset, then they ought to have opened their mouth at the time and told him, why do people wait 4 years and then do stuff anonymously before making a complaint? I think it's all very fishy in the first place. I also think it's about time that the government laid down guidelines, if you like, on what actually constitutes bullying, so that we have a proper bar that people know where they stand. Because now you're going to get every minister frightened to death to talk to his blinking civil servants in case they all get upset. And cracky, if I'd have spent my 40 years working in industry, getting upset about stuff, I would have been a mental wreck by the time I'd finished. It's ridiculous.
Look, Sue, I should obviously point out that Dominic Raab has resigned because at least 2 of those allegations against him were upheld. But I understand that you're concerned about his departure and the circumstances surrounding it, something we'll be debating in my big opinion just after 9. But Norma, have you ever suffered at the hands of an abusive boss?
Yeah, I have suffered, but I do understand what a bully is, because I'm a bully, particularly in my household. I mean, your first speaker described me completely. I'm like this with my husband. I'm telling me stupid all the time. I insult and offend him and pick him round the ear holes all the time. I'm a bully. Look, the difference between a bully and a good boss is, you don't comment on the person. I'm personal with my husband all the time. He's the only person I bully. I don't think I bully anybody else. And I have been bullied myself at work, and it's really, really unpleasant. But if people comment on the task, like with a child, you don't say you're stupid. You say what you did was stupid. You should treat people with respect. I mean, I agree with your first speaker that, you can be demanding, but there's a difference between being demanding and being belittling, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. But look, you sound like a lovely bully to me. I've enjoyed being bullied by all 3 of you. Could you please raise your hands if you think Dominic Raab was right to resign? If you think he was right to resign, please raise your hands. No, there you go. All 3 of my callers to Dial Dolan believe that Dominic Raab should still be in post as Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary. Brilliant to have all 3 of you on the... Oh, go on, Attic, briefly, if you can.
Definitely should be.
Say something. Generally speaking about the government, we have a problem that ministers change so frequently.
Yes.
To have a good government and a complete position, a minister have to be from start to finish of the government. That's one of the problems, that they don't have the assertiveness and a good space to do what they want. I think that's our fundamental problem.
A really good point. As with any business, you don't want a high turnover of staff, especially at the top. Well, we don't have a high turnover on Dial Dolan because the callers to this show are so good, which means that Norma, Attic and Sue, you'll be returning very, very shortly to the programme. Thanks for your input. Brilliant stuff. Don't forget, my big opinion is on its way. My first on-air comments about the departure of Dominic Raab. I'll give you my measured verdict. But next up, are conservatories just a bit naff? We'll be debating that with the star of Homes Under the Hammer, Martin Roberts. He's next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My big opinion verdict on Dominic Raab and his departure from high office in just over 10 minutes in My Big Opinion. You won't want to miss it. But let's talk about this. Are you the proud owner of a conservatory? Well, it might be bringing the value of your house down. According to reports, the classic glass conservatory is no longer valued as an asset, with energy prices through the roof and modern tastes ever changing. So are conservatories just a bit naff? Joining us to discuss this is the star of Homes Under the Hammer and many other TV hits, Martin Roberts. Hi, Martin.
Good evening, Mark.
Thank you for joining us from such a scenic location. Where are you?
So I am in the beautiful Rhondda Valley, but I wanted to be in the middle of a housing estate, possibly surrounded by people who might have conservatories, who will be taking this whole thing very badly. Because how come somebody somewhere has said that something that I think is a really fantastic addition to a house is suddenly naff? I mean, they'll be saying that garages and kitchens and fake stone fireplaces a naff before we know it. I mean, who is writing this stuff? They are amazing spaces that have natural light, and yes, they cost a little bit to heat, and yes, they're very cold in the winter and very hot in the summer. But for a couple of weeks in the year, in the spring and in the autumn, they are the most beautiful places to be.
Is the issue that some of them are badly done?
Yes, in the same way that, you know, there was a flurry of people offering double glazing, and some of it was very good and some of it really wasn't. There was a people who jumped on the bandwagon of providing, conservatories that may not be up to scratch. And I think what people are referring to when they're talking about naff is the kind of stuff that's made out of either that kind of old-fashioned aluminium-looking aluminium, where it actually looks like aluminium as opposed to plastic, or just badly put together. I think modern conservatories, if they're done right, they can be beautiful. A lot of the plastic that they use to do these things can actually look like wood, and actually some people have conservatories that are actually made of wood, so it's a bit more like an orangery. I guess it's what you call it. If I said that the house has an orangery, then everyone would be going, oh, nice additional thing to have. But because it's called a conservatory, people go, no, conservatives, they're just so 70s. Well, they're not. We need space more than anything else in our homes, and a conservatory can provide really nice living space.
Yeah, they can be a great playroom for the kids, fantastic for entertaining, really good for pensioners who can't go outside but want some sunshine. I wonder whether, Martin, criticism of conservatories is just pure snobbery.
I think it is. It's like, well, one wouldn't have a conservatory, would one? You know, it's rubbish. It is absolutely rubbish. I mean, this whole concept that this report that's recently been published said that a conservatory can actually devalue a property by like up to £15,000. I mean, I don't know.
Well, he's been cut off in his prime. He should have done it from the conservatory, where there's a good broadband connection. I've got to say, I absolutely love conservatories. You've got a new development, haven't you now, which is rooms with a glass roof, which I think is somewhere between part of the house and a conservatory. But I'm all for natural light. I think they're fantastic. I think they're great in care homes as well. Lots of locations. Bars and restaurants that have got a conservatory are some of the best places to go. I think they're fantastic. So, look, if you are a conservatory fan, do let me know. So much to get through in the next couple of hours. From 9, it's My Big Opinion. It's all about Dominic Raab. We're not messing around on that one. But we've also got to talk about some other big issues across the course of the show. We've got the papers coming in at 10:30, and we're expecting a big reaction to the Raab story. Is this poor old Rishi Sunak's first major political crisis? Can he bounce back from this? Another blow just before those local elections. Many critical of Rishi Sunak for his handling of the situation. Of course, Dominic Raab was the guy that nominated him for the Tory leadership, which at the time was politically brave. And has he been shown enough loyalty by Sunak, given the fact that he has now moved on and has left the government? It's pretty clear to me that Raab has taken one for the team. Is that the right thing to do? I think if he wants to resume his political career, he's going to have to hope that Sunak wins the next election, which I believe by the day becomes increasingly likely an unfashionable view. But Mark Dolan tonight is the home of unfashionable views. So My Big Opinion next with full pundit reaction. So much to get through. Big debates, big stories, big guests, and plenty of chuckles along the way. After all, it is Friday night.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. The weekend is looking fairly unsettled. We will see some heavy showers, longer spells of rain, but I'm hopeful there'll be some sunny spells in between. But it is going to be rather cool, particularly by the end of the weekend into the beginning of next week. Looking at the bigger picture, low pressure is developing and in charge of the weather as we move through the weekend and into the beginning of next week, just slides away, allowing a colder northerly air to develop across the country. This evening, cloudy across the central swathe of the UK into the early hours, some heavy rain possible at times. Either side of this, drier with some clear spells, some mist and fog patches across southern England. Touch of frost under the clearer spells, but temperatures holding up where it's cloudy and rainy. lows of 6 or 7 degrees here, -1 and -2 under those clear spells. But it means bright start for some across southern areas, a few mist and fog patches quickly clearing, and it's not long though before further cloud and showery rain pushes into southern parts of England, whilst Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England having a cloudy day, outbreaks of rain here. Another sunny day across Scotland though, highs of 17 Celsius towards the northwest. Elsewhere we'll generally see the mid-teens. Then into the evening time, further showery rain pushes north across much of the country. The wind's starting to pick up across northern Scotland, coming in from a northerly direction. And generally, with more cloud around and showery outbreaks of rain as that low pressure develops across the UK, it means temperatures won't be as low. We'll see generally minimum temperatures of 4 to 7 degrees. So it does mean a chilly start to Sunday. Rather cloudy though, showery outbreaks of rain. Some of the rain could be heavy at times as it pushes northwards across the country. Cooler and more unsettled across Scotland after almost a week of pure sunshine here, and Northern Ireland generally dry with some showers here, and temperatures generally feeling a little bit cooler. Cold day into the beginning of the new working week, temperatures below average Monday and Tuesday.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, at 9:30 on Sunday morning when I'll be speaking to David Davis, the former Brexit secretary who describes Dominic Raab as his protégé. What does he think about the former Deputy Prime Minister's resignation and the bullying report? I'll also be joined by Giles Kenningham, MBE, former head of press at number 10 Downing Street, to discuss the Sunday newspapers. All that and more with me, Camilla Tominey, Sunday morning at 9:30.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel. Was Raab robbed? It's a number 10 in crisis special. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Lots to get through in my big opinion. My reaction to the sensational resignation of Dominic Raab. In the big story, who runs Britain, the government or the civil service? And my Mark Meets guest is one of the most recognised actors on TV, the star of Allo Allo, Red Dwarf, Emmerdale and Coronation Street, Ken Morley. Is political correctness killing TV? Lots to get through. Big guests, big stories and big opinions. And it's Friday night, so we'll have a big laugh along the way. A busy 2 hours to come. First, the headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, it's 9 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Dominic Raab says the inquiry into bullying allegations against him was flawed and it sets a precedent that will have a paralysing effect on government. The former Deputy Prime Minister has spoken to GB News following his resignation after he'd been found to have acted in an intimidating and aggressive way towards staff.
I'm very confident that I didn't behave in a bullying way. Most of these allegations were dismissed out of hand. Being able to pull very senior civil servants, not junior members of staff, up and say, look, I don't have the basic information to decide this. That was one of the things on which I was found to have been bullying because it offended someone, or because I said in relation to human rights reform, to get more foreign national offenders removed from this country to strengthen free speech, I said I thought the department were being obstructive. If these kind of things amount to bullying, then I think it puts a handbrake, a paralysing effect on ministers delivering for the British people.
Oliver Dowden has replaced Dominic Raab as the new Deputy Prime Minister. He will also remain in his role as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. And Alex Chalk takes over as the new Justice Secretary, making him the 11th person appointed in that role since 2010. The Law Society, though, has warned he inherits an even worse justice crisis than any of his recent predecessors. Meanwhile, Labour's Shadow Justice Secretary Steve Reid has attacked Dominic Raab's record in office, accusing him of leaving the criminal justice system in tatters, with Sir Keir Starmer criticising the Prime Minister over what he called indecision and weakness in allowing Mr Raab to resign. In other news this evening, the Health Secretary Steve Barclay says he's going to court to stop the Royal College of Nursing's upcoming strike. The RCN has planned industrial action from the 30th of April to the 2nd of May. NHS employers, though, say the mandate for strikes expires on May the 1st. Pat Cullen, the RCN's General Secretary, has described it as a nakedly political move from a bullying government. The CBI has suspended all policy and membership activity after dozens of the biggest names in British business quit the organisation after a fresh allegation of rape. John Lewis, NatWest, Jaguar Land Rover and BT are amongst those to pull out after a second woman made allegations of sexual misconduct at the trade body. The CBI says it shares the shock and revulsion over the allegations, and it will put forward new proposals for members to decide on the future role and purpose of the organisation at an extraordinary general meeting in June. The Home Secretary has announced a number of amendments to the illegal migration bill to make it more difficult for domestic and international courts to block deportations. The Home Office says those arriving by unauthorised routes who are not at risk of death, persecution, torture or degrading treatment will be deported. The appeals will then be heard remotely. Suella Braverman says the amendments will help prevent last-minute bogus asylum claims. On TV, online, DAB, radio and tune in too. This is GB News. Now, it's over to Mark.
Thanks, Aaron. My thanks to Aaron Armstrong, who returns in an hour's time. Was Raab robbed? It's a number 10 in crisis special. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Coming up, we'll bring you full reaction to the sensational resignation of Justice Secretary and Deputy PM Dominic Raab. Is his departure at the behest of civil servants an attack on Brexit and the democratic will of the British people? That's the topic of my big opinion in just one moment. In the big story, who runs Britain, the government or the civil service? My Mark Meets guest is one of the most recognised actors on TV. Star of Allo Allo, Red Dwarf, Emmerdale and Coronation Street, Ken Morley. Is political correctness killing TV? In my take at 10, talking about PC, woke nutters want to get rid of the Man United and Man City badges because of alleged links to slavery. My reaction at 10. Tonight's newsmaker is legendary former England manager Big Sam Allardyce. Why is sport under threat from eco-warriors? Mark Dolan tonight is the home of the papers with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30 with 3 top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Tonight, Stephanie Tetchy, Sam Dowler and Mike Porky Parry. Tonight I'll be asking the pundits, is the Ryanair boss Michael O'Leary right to say that we'll eventually go back into the EU? As Royal Mail workers get a 10% pay rise, do strikes work? And should cyclists have number plates? Plus your emails, even the spicy ones, especially the spicy ones, mark@gbnews.uk. And this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. A big 2 hours to come. It's Friday night, so let's have some hot debates and plenty of laughs along the way. Look, let's hope now. What is it, 9:05? You've probably got the kids in bed, so crack open a bottle of cold beer, maybe something even stronger than that, or fire up a kettle. Let's get a brew on and let's get to work. Another one bites the dust. The pugnacious Justice Secretary and Deputy PM Dominic Raab, famous for his love of karate, has been given the chop. This following an inquiry into alleged bullying accusations. Now, I'm not going to defend the abuse or mistreatment of staff. It's my view that there's a clear difference between a tough, effective boss and an overbearing thug or a bully. If Raab has made civil servants' lives a misery and threatened their mental or even physical health, that's appalling. And it's a concern that aggressive bullying, sometimes of a sexual nature, may be part of the culture in Westminster, which has major issues for the governance of this country. Sadly, insiders, in confidence from the corridors of power, tell me that that is indeed the case, that abuse is rife. Elected officials should be held to the same standards as the rest of us, if not even higher, given the power they wield and the privilege they enjoy. But is Raab really a cabinet minister so cruel he makes Lord Sugar look like Mary Poppins? I'm not sure we'll ever know, given the worryingly low bar by which his behaviour has been judged. Writing in today's Telegraph, Raab himself said, in setting the threshold for bullying so low, this inquiry has set a dangerous precedent. It will encourage spurious complaints against ministers and have a chilling effect on those driving change on behalf of your government and ultimately the British people. Well, Dominic Raab exclusively told us here at GB News today that he does not believe that he behaved in a bullying way and that if criticism of civil service actions amounts to bullying, then it will put a handbrake and a paralysing effect on delivering for the British people. Raab also told this channel of a tyranny of subjective hurt feelings. Take a listen.
Look, I'm very confident that I didn't behave in a bullying way. Most of these allegations were dismissed out of hand. If these kind of things amount to bullying, then I think it puts a handbrake, a paralysing effect on ministers delivering for the British people, and that can't be right.
Has a talented minister gone because of hurty feelings? Is it a coincidence that this tough-talking Brexiteer Justice Secretary who wanted to shake up the criminal justice system, get tough with criminals and support the Home Secretary in her plan to stop the boats potentially tearing up the European Convention on Human Rights should now be gone? Is that a coincidence? Notwithstanding these allegations, and if he has abused staff, I condemn this wholeheartedly. But Raab's defenestration is a win for the so-called woke blob of Remain-supporting civil servants, too many of whom have shown post-Brexit that they're happy to thwart an elected government, whether it's tapping into Brexit opportunities, controlling our borders, or even cutting taxes. It's been argued by many that Liz Truss and her Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng were stitched up right royally by civil servants that served under them in the Treasury. The departure of the kickboxing Justice Secretary is a kick in the teeth to ordinary voters who want to see a success made of Brexit, who want an end to illegal migrant crossings, and who want more accountability and a better performance from our expensively funded public sector. In the 70s, the Conservatives under Edward Heath ran an election campaign based upon a simple question: who runs Britain? This was in relation to the overpowerful unions that were holding the country to ransom. Sounds familiar. But perhaps the greatest threat to our democracy now is the unelected civil service, thousands of whom do an excellent job, but others, often in positions of power, seem to be working against the government and therefore against the will of the people of this country. Who runs Britain? The civil service or the government? Today, that question got a whole lot harder to answer. What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. I'll get to your emails shortly, but reacting to my big opinion, three of the top pundits in the country: broadcaster and journalist Mike Porky Parry, political commentator and author Sam Dowler, and TV presenter and broadcaster Stephanie Tetchy. Stephanie, let me start with you. Was Raab robbed?
No. He wasn't robbed. He deserved to resign. There should be no bullying in any workplace, Mark, let alone politics. And there is no I in team. And clearly the power got into Raab's head. That's why he abused these civil servants and he belittled them. It wasn't about whether these snowflakes couldn't reach the standards that he had set for them. There was a lack of respect. It was him abusing his authority. And here in his post interviews, he sounds like a narcissist that's trying to worm himself out of a hole.
Stephanie, so many of these accusations didn't fall within the statute of limitations. You know, you're supposed to normally, if it's a business, it would be HR. They'd need to have these accusations instantly or certainly within 3 months. Some of these accusations, 4 years old, no times or dates recorded. He's been done up like a kipper.
Well, you know what? This is a wake-up call to Rishi Sunak and co. that something does need to be done so that there will be no more future Dominic Raabs in the future, because I feel...
You mean effective, transformative ministers? Just get the job
done. No, he doesn't get the job down. He's causing discord among the party and among people who work for him. People should feel healthy when they're working with someone like Dominic Raab, not feeling like they're being abused.
OK, fair enough. Well, look, Sam, you've got your hand up. We'll come to Porky Parry, who, let's be honest, has got more terrifying bosses on his CV than you can shake a finger at. But what's your view, Sam Dowler?
Well, I wasn't putting my hand. I was like, yes, girl, because at the end of the day, like, I mean, I used to work in the music industry, and I was bullied at work. Somebody threw a full bin at me. Somebody called me a gay C word in a meeting. Like, these.
That's really shocking.
Yeah, it is really shocking. And and back then it was like, if you don't like it, you can get lost because somebody else wants a job in the music industry right behind you. So I mean, I know what it feels like.
And what does it feel like? Can you just
horrendous? I've cried on the way to work before. I've cried on the train on the way to work. Yes, absolutely. And it's a horrendous feeling. And like so I mean, fair enough, like, out of the 8 complaints, they dismissed 6 of them, but the 2 of them, still stand up. And so, of course, bullying is subjective. And but however, like, for the stories that we're hearing, like, I would have liked to have seen Dominic Raab at least say, at least give the whole politician line I'm sorry if they felt they were bullied or anything like that. But he hasn't even said a word. And all he's doing is like trying to cover his own back and saying they weren't bullied at all. It's nonsense.
He's given it all the talk.
He said an awful lot of words. Now, I agree with what both of my, fellow broadcasters tonight have said. Bullying is horrendous. It can drive you to suicide. I know that. Because in the profession I've worked in, the newspaper industry in Fleet Street, the broadcasting industry in radio and television, it can actually draw you. I worked at one place, right, where 17 members of staff over 5 years ended up in the Priory because of the demonic bullying.
Do you miss TalkSport?
No, I'm not going to say where it was or who it was, but the demonic bullying from high up can drive you mad. However, because I'm so sensitive to bullying, when I looked at everything I've seen today from both sides of the Dominic Raab story, I can't see that element of bullying which would have been so offensive.
But you weren't there, Mike.
No, I know I wasn't there, but what I'm saying is, as Mark has already alluded to, how come incidents which happened both 4 and 2.5 years ago suddenly all came together on one day when a cabal of people in the civil service got together and decided to have a go? To me, it means, excuse me, let me finish, to me it means that people in the civil service are now so sensitive that the civil service is definitely taking on the government about who runs this country and how, and that's a disgrace.
Or does it mean that the people who were bullied before, like with victims of sexual predator, like
have found the confidence
maybe they find the confidence to say something. Maybe if like, you know, a couple of people have said something, they're like, oh, well, that happened to me as well.
Did you see any evidence of that in the Dominic Raab situation?
We haven't seen all the information.
We have seen the basic report.
Mike, do you think he's worthy of being the Deputy Prime Minister?
Yes,
he's supposed to be setting an example. He's underneath Rishi Sunak, and he has these claims of bullying. But that is not my Deputy Prime Minister.
From what we've seen so far, I'm sure we'll all pore over the details of the report tomorrow in all the newspapers and all that. From what I've seen so far, I have not seen one egregious example of rotten bullying. He didn't throw a phone at anybody. He didn't...
as Gordon Brown allegedly did,
exactly.
according to an article by Andrew Walsh in The Guardian.
He didn't shout anybody out. He didn't throw any tomatoes. So a lot of the evidence was hearsay.
But you don't need to be physically abusive.
Can you stop bullying each other?
So it's classic one rule for the Tories, one rule for everybody else. Like, most people can't, for example, use a phone on the shop floor or use a phone when they're at work at all, except some MPs like sit and watch porn on their phones.
But isn't this cultural?
Once again, one rule for the Tories and one rule for everybody else.
Well, lots of Labour MPs have been accused of bullying in the past. Also, that dreadful piece of work, John Bercow.
Yes, of course.
Can't go into the House of Lords.
And it's not partisan. Bullying is not partisan at all. It's across the board. And if anyone from the left or the right was accused of bullying, then I would stand up for the victims every time. Of course, that's what you did.
Isn't this part of life, though, that, OK, if it's sexual, abuse or true mental torture, that's unacceptable. But having a tough boss, maybe even crying after work, I've had some pretty tough bosses as well. What it does, it gives you a thick skin. It's all part of life.
Yeah, but there's a limit to it, Mark. There's a line that crosses for different individuals. As we said earlier, bullying is subjective. Some people take it to the point where it affects their mental health and how they view themselves. I think he said to one of them that their work was useless. Those kind of words.
I don't know if that's bullying, though. I mean,
no, it's respect. It's respect.
I've had to tell people sometimes this is useless. If I task somebody, with something I need, you've got 4 hours, bring it to me, bring it to you, it's useless. I throw it down and say it's not good enough.
It's not what you're saying.
In the 1950s, Mike, you can't do that
anymore.
That's it.
You can't do that
anymore. Excuse me, Sam. Are you telling me...
70s.
Are you telling me that you cannot make a judgment on the work of somebody?
You can speak to them and take them to one side and tell them that they need to do better.
Oh, really?
Or they need
So
you
when
don't shout at them and tell them they're useless.
So when you're in a meeting, you've got 5 minutes to go to a deadline and you're asking for all the work to come in.
I agree with you.
Please,
Steph. Just go out the room and say something else.
I agree with you on that, but it's not what you say, it's how you say it. That's the problem.
Okay. Yeah, you don't always have time to think. And Steph, you're much younger than me, and so is Sam. And do you think that young people are more sensitive to workplace pressure these days?
Yes, we are.
It's not on anymore.
Than they were in
Yes, we are.
Let's hand it to my audience. What do you think? If you're listening on the radio, if you're watching on TV, do you think that Dominic Raab has been stitched up? Mark at gbnews.uk. Have we forgotten the values of a tough boss, or is this man guilty of abuse? Let me know. Mark at gbnews.uk. Coming up next in the big story. We'll keep this going. Is Britain being run by the government or civil servants? That's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns. All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Well, a flood of emails are coming in thick and fast in reaction to my big opinion. Was Raab stitched up? Let me know what you think about that. Mark at gbnews.uk. Was Raab robbed? Should he still be Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary? Mark says, Steve, Raab was not bullying. You've got two snowflakes on your panel. Anne says, flaky, flaky. We know the reason why Britain is in the mess that it's currently in. And how about this from Pat? Mark, Dominic Raab has been stitched up right royally. You've got two snowflakes on your panel. There you go, 2 out of 3. Hi, Mark, says Richard. Yes, as soon as they get someone who tries to get things done, the civil servants object. Keep those emails coming in if you want to stand up for the civil servants who accuse the former Justice Secretary of bullying. Then do drop me a line, mark at gbnews.uk. But let's keep that going. It's time for the big story and more reaction to the departure of Dominic Raab from the government amid bullying accusations. Many have railed at this decision, including our very own Anne Widdecombe, arguing it demonstrates the unchecked political power of public servants. That when she spoke to Tom Harwood earlier today. So what is the truth? Who runs Britain, the government or the civil service? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome the Labour MP for Birmingham Perry Barr, Khalid Mahmood, and the director of the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation, Niall Gardner. Let me start with you, Khalid, if I may. Who runs Britain, the government or the civil service?
Well, ultimately, obviously, it's the government that runs it and makes the policies, and the civil servants are the people who carry it out. So it's in partnership, actually. So there's no one group of people that actually run the government. You have to those that implement it. You have to have those that make the policy, and it's the politicians who make that policy.
OK. Do you think the relationship of a Labour government with the civil service would be different, given the fact that there are so many lefties in the civil servants?
Well, no, come on. I don't know how many lefties there are in the civil service. But the fact is there are people who are looking at all this issue. And what they're trying to do is to carry out the work that the government and the ministers tell them to do. And the way that you do that, you have to do that in conjunction with the right management that there is through the processes that they are. And that's the way it's done, where you have a particular person who has over 4.5 years hasn't changed their attitude to what's going on, then that's a serious issue for the civil service to look at.
OK, well, let's bring Niall Gardner into this. Niall is the director of the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation. And Niall, my studies at A-level politics will remind me that Mrs Thatcher struggled with a very politicised civil service in the 80s.
Yes, Mark, thanks very much for having me on the show today. And without a doubt, I think the civil service has become incredibly powerful, even more so than the Thatcher days of the 1980s. And I think at the end of the day, civil servants are increasingly driving policy, dictating policy, getting rid of ministers they don't like. The allegations against Dominic Raab are absolutely ridiculous, frankly. And I think you have a whole series of cases whereby civil servants are trying to oust usually pro-Brexit ministers. You saw similar allegations made against Priti Patel in an effort by some civil servants to oust her. They thankfully failed to do so. And I think it's absolutely outrageous that you do have these left-wing, ultra-woke, snowflake civil servants who are pushing a left-wing political agenda in the civil service here. They've claimed a major scalp with Dominic Raab here, and they'll be seeking other targets. They have become incredibly powerful. And I think that what we are witnessing here is, without a doubt, I think as Dan Wootton described it, the woke blob in action here, and wielding just incredible levels of power, absolutely unacceptable. They seem to be unaccountable to the British taxpayer, and this madness has to end.
Brilliantly put by Dan Wootton, as ever. Dan, of course, is back at 9 o'clock on Monday. Khalid, let's talk about your former boss, Gordon Brown. Civil Service Chief warned Gordon Brown over abusive treatment of staff. Gordon Brown's abusive behaviour and volcanic eruptions of foul temper left Downing Street staff so frightened that he received an unprecedented reprimand from the head of the civil service. This, according to an explosive new book by the Labour-supporting journalist Andrew Rawnsley. Apparently, he broke 3 phones a week by hurling them at the wall. Do you think that Gordon Brown should have stood down when he was Prime Minister for his bullying behaviour?
Well, where that sort of bullying takes place, of course, I think we have to look at people. People come to work not to be abused, whether it's physical or mental. And I think those are the important issues. Look, when abuse goes on for 4.5 years, look, if you want to try and test out what the balance in the workplace is, you can see what people respond to and what people don't respond to. There is a huge amount of issue in bullying in the workplace, whether it's the teaching service, whether it's in the National Health Service, whether it's in general life and working in different areas, local government or national government. I think we have to look at how we can behave respectfully and ensure at the same time the work is done. What we need to do where we feel the work isn't being done is to engage the structure that we have in front of us and speak to the line managers and make sure that work is done. We don't have to behave disrespectfully to people, but what we have to do is to ensure the work is done, but they can be done. We've got to move on. We can't have, look, I grew up on the tools. So you can call me a snowflake if you want to, but I was an apprentice to trained guy. I can take as much as I can give, but that's not the point here. The point is it affects people's livelihoods and affects people's lives, and that's what we're going to be careful of.
What about the will of the British people? Now, Khalid, Labour are odds on to win the next election. You could become a minister. I've got no doubt you would do an excellent job. We're very fond of you here on Mark Dolan tonight. You always speak with honesty and authenticity. I would hope that you would do that with civil servants. I would hope that if you've got civil servants under you, that you would tell them when their work was substandard.
Of course, I think that's...
Well, that's what Dominic Raab did, and he's lost his job.
That is the right thing. It's the way you do it. You have people with you who are senior civil servants, and it is their responsibility to resolve issues of management at that workplace. It wouldn't be my duty to shout at people. I would say that I'm disappointed the work hasn't been done. I would then speak to the senior civil servant in position and say, look, I'm not getting this work done. Can you please resolve this issue and see how we can move forward? Because this is not good enough as far as I'm concerned for the department to move forward.
OK, Niall, how do we exact change within the civil service? Because I've got so many viewers and listeners who are raging about this unelected cabal who seem to control government policy.
Well, that's a great question, actually. And any efforts taken by Conservative ministers to rein in the civil service, of course, gets this backlash and accusations of bullying. And of course, you know, with regard to Dominic Raab, for example, you look at the report, there's no evidence of any actual bullying by Dominic Raab. He took measures to enhance the productivity, I think, and effectiveness of civil servants. But clearly, they strongly resisted that. It's very difficult, actually, to change the system. I do think the Prime Minister himself really has to lead on this. And throwing Dominic Raab under the bus, basically, which is what has happened here, I think does make Rishi Sunak look very weak. And I think that nothing can change unless you see leadership at the very highest levels on this particular issue. But taxpayers, of course, the public, want to see full accountability from civil servants. Increasingly, civil servants are acting like political activists, and they are using claims of bullying basically to undermine the work of government ministers who are trying to actually improve levels of effectiveness and efficiency. It's also absolutely disgraceful that you have large numbers of civil servants who are actually still working from home when they should be in the office. Most people would call that outright laziness. And it's unacceptable that you have very high percentages of civil servants who are still working from home, even though the pandemic is long over. And so you've got a culture of political activism, sheer laziness, a lack of efficiency here. You've got a lot of workers in the civil service who are not up to the job. And it seems impossible right now for government ministers to do anything about it whatsoever. And I think this is really undermining, I think, Britain at home and also on the world stage as well. It's absolutely unacceptable. It's an absolute disgrace.
Khalid, I've only got a couple of seconds left. I'll give you the last word. I don't want to get in trouble with Maria, the producer, but let me ask you, my colleague Jacob Rees-Mogg famously left notes at his business department during his stint in the cabinet, and he left notes saying, do come back to the office. Do you think, briefly if you can, that the civil service need a kick up the backside?
Well, look, simply people do need to come back, and that's up to the management structures that we have in place to ensure that they do come back. I think it's important. I've tried to get meeting at a local level here in Birmingham, and unfortunately people are not back at work.
Okay.
We need to get all of that productivity back up again and people working properly from the offices, but depending on what sort of arrangements some businesses have.
Well, look, if you do enter the cabinet, Khalid, I've got you down as Foreign Secretary because you're a natural diplomat.
Thank you, Mark.
My thanks to Khalid Mahmood. Of course, he is the Labour MP for, let me tell you, Birmingham Perry Bar. And also my thanks to the director of the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation, Niall Gardner. Now, we've been asking you earlier today in our People's Poll, following the departure of Dominic Raab, is the civil service now running Britain? Is the civil service now running Britain? 13% said no, and the vast majority of you, 87%, take the view that the civil service is indeed running Britain. Coming up next with the pundits, is the Ryanair boss Michael O'Leary right that we will eventually go back into the EU? As Royal Mail workers get a 10% pay rise, do strikes work? And here's a corker for you. Should cyclists have number plates? I'll see you in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Okay, brilliant stuff. Do you like this live telly? There you go. Keep that prompter rolling because we got lots to get through. I'll come to your emails very shortly, but I'm delighted to welcome my pundits back for a big old debate on the massive stories of the day. We have broadcaster and journalist Mike Porky Parry. We also have the political commentator Sam Dowler and the gorgeous Stephanie Tetchy. Are you allowed to say that? Well, yes, you are, because I don't.
Stop it.
Stephanie Tetchy, who is of course, TV presenter, showbiz reporter, and so much more. Now, the Ryanair boss, Michael O'Leary, hasn't pulled any punches with his latest Brexit rant, declaring that as old Brexiteers die off, a young pro-European generation will lead the UK back into the EU. Is he right? Mike Porky Parry.
Well, you know, Michael O'Leary is a fantastic businessman. I mean, one of the world's most successful. I think he runs the world's most successful airline, by the way. And their biggest problem this summer is they can't get enough big planes to take the number of people they want to take on holiday, OK? So he's a terrific guy. But remember that of all the countries who ever joined the EU, the one that really benefited most was Ireland. I did a story in Ireland when Lord Mountbatten was murdered, OK? And I had to drive from Dublin over to the other side of Ireland, Sligo, to get to Mullaghmore, where Lord Mountbatten was blown up, OK? Now, you know how long ago that was? That was 40 years ago. If you took... In those days, you were going down country roads across Ireland. It took like 7 hours to get there. These days, everywhere you go in Ireland, massive motorways, massive dual carriageways. A friend of mine, Danny Kelly, the broadcaster, OK, Danny lives in this village in Ireland and his mother lives in another one 3 miles away, and there's a 3-lane motorway either way between the two villages. So Ireland have benefited massively from the EU. They've got a lot more out of it than they've put into it, so it's no wonder that the Irish like the EU. For Mr O'Leary, his base is in Ireland, so of course he's going to start complaining about any countries who try to skew his business formula, if you see what I mean.
And it must have hurt his business, Brexit.
No, I don't. Say? Well, I'm not. You see, he's such a good businessman. He will do anything. He'll go.
The pandemic will be far worse.
Yeah. Sorry.
The pandemic will be far worse.
The pandemic will be far worse. You're absolutely right. But what I'm saying is that he would like a unified Europe because, as you quite rightly say, red tape, regulations, minimalised. If every country is singing from the same hymn sheet. We decided we didn't want to keep singing to the European hymn sheet, so we decided to get out. And Mr O'Leary's not very happy about that. This guy's so brilliant. I mean, he has winning racehorses and everything else. He's a terrific guy.
Not the Midas touch. I mean, he's like the Steve Jobs or the James Dyson of Ireland, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yes.
A great innovator.
So we should listen to him. I mean, he said one quote which I just loved about Brexit. We mistakenly assumed that there would be some kind of competence at the top of government under Johnson, and they would at least put the economy first and do a sensible deal, which they did not. And I know what he's saying about, you know, because it was obviously old people were more likely to vote for Brexit, and younger people, obviously, who will come up the ranks, and you know, and the olders will die off, like he's saying,
and they
which is
will
true.
love Brexit.
No. We will go back into the single market. We look at where we are now. It's a nightmare.
We've already talked about the obstructive civil service in an earlier part of the show.
Them for everything,
the
Mike.
Civil service don't like Brexit, and they have been constructive in trying to stop Brexit working.
But Mike,
4,000 pieces of legislation should have been cleared now through the...
And it hasn't been cleared.
And they haven't been because they've been uncooperative.
What does Brexit even stand for anymore? It's just been... It's something that's now feels... It feels like a pipeline dream, you know? Even the most hardcore Brexiteer right now is probably twiddling them thumbs thinking, what did I vote for?
Well, I voted Remain, but I can see the great opportunities of Brexit.
Of course.
So
I can't see it right now, Mike.
Where
are they?
I can't see it.
Yeah.
We're
now in the Pacific trade deal. That is the biggest trade market in the world.
We've got control of our borders. Control of our
borders. Do we have control?
Are you having a laugh? Our borders. Our borders are the worst thing they ever were before.
It's easier to enact the policies as well rather than outside of the EU. Let me tell you for that.
But also the trans thing that you were talking about. Like this is the one thing that unified like Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and Hillary Clinton, because they were all like, no, thank you very much. So they're trying to say, like,
that's because they're protectionist.
And we're going to be beholden to what they want.
Millions of lives were saved by the vaccine rollout, which we could not have done had we still been in Europe.
We're not talking about the vaccine now, because not on this channel.
No, you don't like to talk about the successes of Brexit, do you?
I agree with
because right now we're looking like a laughing stock of a country who voted to leave the EU.
My country's not a laughing stock, Steph.
It is.
The same country.
Look, it's all about opinions, but I'm certain that Brexit will come good if it hasn't already. It's an insurance policy against ever closer union, about being a member of the euro, a single European army, free trade, you name it. The Brexit benefits are here to stay. But look, it is all about opinions. What's yours, Mark, at gbnews.uk. Now, Jeremy Vine, my colleague in broadcasting over at Channel 5, has lashed out at celebrity lawyer Nick Freeman after the lawyer called for cyclists to have a vehicle-style ID for identification purposes in case of an accident. So, look, what do we think about this? Should cyclists have number plates? Stephanie?
Yes, they should. I feel like cyclists have been a law unto themselves. They can get away with murder, even though they don't commit it often. If that is the case, there's no one to hold them accountable. I think if they had ID, we will know who the culprits are. And I feel like they have free reign of the roads and they simply need to be held accountable.
Steph is singing on my hymn sheet because that is exactly what I think as well. And like, so my sister lives down in Devon. She lives right on the Tarka Trail, which is a beautiful trail, and you know, and her kids have been almost run over like multiple times on this. And the highway code says that they must give way to pedestrians, and they don't. They barge on past. Like literally, it's like ID cards, for example. If you have nothing to hide, what's the problem in having some sort of ID? Of course you should.
And Michael, I mean,
there
you
are
go
too
further
many
with
cyclists who use pavements as roads.
They do.
Yes, disgraceful. I was very nearly knocked over the other morning. I was going to the station 6:05, and whoosh, you know, I could feel the force of
the G's. And wouldn't you have liked to have got his ID
Michael,
number?
are you sure you weren't paying the price for the night before?
No, definitely not.
Were you still unsteady on your feet? It wasn't just a bike.
No. You sully my character. What I would say is this, that if you start registering cyclists, you are inventing another huge government department of red tape. It would be almost impossible to, you know, get it all in line.
But the roads will just be that little bit more safer. It would be that little bit more safer.
They should be ideal.
I've got a better idea.
What's your idea?
If you're quiet down for a moment, I'll talk to Steph. Steph, the better idea is that
send a complaint to HR.
All cyclists...
I'm being bullied.
All cyclists should wear a helmet. In that helmet, there should be a chip and that chip should register with GPS satellite signalling so you can be traced at all times.
Wouldn't that be expensive to implement?
No, it wouldn't be anything like as expensive as starting a registration. Because I tell you why, Sam.
A little plate on their bikes.
Look, a little plate on the bike, an incident happens. Do you honestly think somebody would be able to notice the number of the bike?
Don't we do that with cars? Don't we do that with cars?
They do it with cars.
And don't you think people just paint over their number anyway because it's such a tiny number?
They don't do it with cars,
I'd say, look, I'll tell you what, I'd go further. I'd put a chip in people's heads.
Oh, no.
You need to talk to your mates about that.
That's right. But put a chip in the cyclist helmets, you can, and then you can trace them everywhere and they're accountable.
Or more simply, just a little badge on their bike.
That's enough.
Just at the back and at the
registration.
front.
And who would police it? Who would police it and monitor it?
Well, I mean,
not the Metropolitan Police.
It should be part of the highway code. If you're going to drive on the road, you should have it.
I agree. Three words. Back to me, folks. 3 words for Mike Porky Parry on your bike. What do you think? What is your view? Should bicycles have number plates? Mark at gbnews.uk. Should they pay road tax and insurance? Coming up, my Mark Meets guest is a comedy legend, star of Allo Allo, Red Dwarf, and Emmerdale, and of course Coronation Street. Ken Morley. Remember the brilliant Battersby character from Coronation Street? That's next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to Mark Dolan Tonight. I'll get to your emails very shortly. Don't forget, my take at 10 is coming. The madness of woke censors who want to get rid of the Manchester United and Man City famous crest on their shirt. I'll explain why after 10. But it's time now for Mark Meets. And tonight, one of the most recognised actors on TV, the star of Allo Allo, Red Dwarf, Emmerdale, and most memorably as the eccentric shop manager Reg Holdsworth in Coronation Street, Ken Morley. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight, Ken.
Oh, Mark, there you are. I'm with the mattress.
Now, Ken, I'm thrilled to have you, and you're looking very smart. You've dressed up for the occasion. A little bit of an issue with your line. We're going to work on it, but assuming your broadband connection can hold out, let me ask you, you went from school teacher to actor. How did that happen?
Oh, yes, I went from zero to hero. Yeah.
Now, folks, I'm going to have to interrupt because, Ken, I'm so sorry. We clearly have an issue with your broadband. We're going to reconnect with Ken Morley very shortly. I've got to say, I have always loved Coronation Street. The reason why is because it's so well written. Coronation Street, a lot less depressing than EastEnders, just witty northern humour, a great legacy. I think it's the longest running soap opera in the world, and they still churn out great quality. So I was looking forward to catching up with Ken to talk about his time on the street. I think he did about 6 years as the brilliant Battersby character. Of course, the rather iconic Reg Holdsworth. Listen, let's move on because I've got a couple of emails whilst we wait for Ken Morley to return. And let's have a look at this. It's regarding bicycles. Should cyclists have registration plates? Should they have number plates like cars? This from Jim. Hi, Mark. The two snowflake lefties on your show disgust me. I like the chip idea, but on the bike. Panel, this from Bradley. Mark, who is that frothing, mouthy gobshite on the middle seat? Oh, I think he's referring to Sam Dowler. That's very harsh. Super annoying and sums up what is wrong with this place. I know, maybe he could take himself off to mainland Europe and relocate as he's so desperate to be a part of an unelected quango. This, of course, is in relation to whether or not we re-enter the EU. Take my word for it, we will not go back. And the reason why is because Brexit will be a success. Now, the reason why is it's already an insurance policy against ever closer union, a single European army. You've got the euro, so many other aspects. Independent foreign policy. Brexit Britain is here to stay, let me tell you. But if you disagree, do let me know. And by the way, when it comes to judging Brexit, I think you've got to give it at least 10 years. Godfrey, Mark says, Godfrey, the EU long game is to take back control of all Europe and create the United States of Europe. Silence on illegal boats is part of that game. Destroy all national sovereignty identity by stealth, however long it takes. We voted Brexit to control our destiny at the ballot box. Not possible under EU control. Civil service are pro-EU, not fit for purpose. Drain our swamps too, says Godfrey, who is a retired CEO living in the Isle of Man. Now, Maria, where are we at? OK. Now, we have been running our text poll tonight. Very exciting. We've been asking you lots of questions on Twitter, and we want to pick up on that conversation about cyclists. Should cyclists have number plates? Well, the results are in. A massive 76% say yes, whilst 24% say no. So the vast majority would like to see some kind of registration for cyclists, and why ever not? Now, look, we've had a bit of trouble getting hold of the wonderful guest there, my Mark Meets guest. But don't worry, because we shall be reconnecting with Ken Morley very soon indeed on a future occasion. But let's bring back the reaction of my brilliant panel tonight to the big stories of the day. Stephanie Tecci, Mike Parry and Sam Dowler. And let's talk about posties, who are the latest workers to win themselves a pay rise through industrial action. Spread over 3 years, the wage deal is significantly lower than inflation, but it's still a decent bump. It's 10%. So it begs the question, do strikes work? Stephanie Tecci, it looks like they do.
They do work, and it's sad that people do have to strike in order to get their point across. This could be very much avoided if employers just listen to the needs of their employees financially. We're currently living in a cost of living crisis. All those 18 days worth of strikes last year could have been avoided with this deal, which they've already offered.
Indeed. Well, that's the problem. It's the militant unions, isn't it, Mike?
Well, I think postmen are in a very precarious situation because, especially as we went through COVID, 2 years of lockdown and all that, people have found other ways to communicate with each other in a big, big way. Now, I love postmen, and my ambition, when you stop inviting me on shows like this, is to apply for a job as a postman. It's a fantastic job. It's so energetic. You walk around. You don't go on your bike anymore. You push a trolley around with all the parcels in it. It's great to get around in the morning.
Would you wear shorts in the winter like many of the posties do?
I probably would. Yeah. I've got a fine pair of legs. Correct. But the point I'm making is I think they provide a valuable service, and they are also, in my opinion, one of the most loved and revered professions. Everybody loves their postie. I give my postman £100 every Christmas, and I feel mean at giving him that. You know what I mean? Because they always do their job. Rain, sun, shine, nasty barking dog, huge climb up 32 steps to get to the letterbox. They do it. They are fine, fine citizens in our community, and they deserve everything they've got.
But briefly, Mike, are the government not guilty of rolling over to the unions by granting these pay deals?
No, I don't think they are. I think each has to be taken individually. You have to assess the worth of the person who's asking for the pay deal, and are they worth it? In my view, postmen are worth it a lot more than a load of civil servants who sometimes can't even be bothered to get out of bed and go to work. Postmen can't work from home.
Sam Dowler, the message from the government is strikes work. Do we really want to feed that monster?
Look, you know, like, let's cast our minds back to the pandemic when everyone was, when Boris was out, when everyone was outside banging pots for the NHS, and yet here they are, like, requesting, you know, just you know, a pay rise in line with inflation, and we were all like, oh, thank you for saving our lives. They put their lives on the line, and they literally, like Steph says, like, nobody wants to strike. No one wants to strike. They do it because they literally have to.
A lot of people do like to strike in this country.
But what I also thought was funny is when the barristers decided to strike. Like, I mean, like, obviously these are the MPs' compadres.
Well,
within 5 minutes, they saw those guys with wigs on the street. And they were like, 15%. Here you go, babe.
Time to get the small violins out. Coming up next, my take at 10. Woke nutters want to get rid of the Man United and Man City badges because of alleged links to slavery. My reaction, including the brilliant Big Sam Allardyce. All of that next, plus the papers.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop
failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, woke nutters want to get rid of the Man United and Man City badges after hundreds of years of history because of alleged links to slavery. My reaction. Tonight's newsmaker is legendary former England manager Big Sam Allardyce. Why is sport now being targeted by eco-warriors? Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of the papers with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30. So a really busy hour to come. Big guests, big stories and big opinions. And it's Friday night, so we want to have some fun as well. Grab something cold and fizzy from the fridge and I'll see you after the headlines with the warm and fizzy Aaron Armstrong.
You could say effervescent. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Good evening to you. Dominic Raab has blamed activists within the civil service for his downfall. The Deputy Prime Minister resigned earlier after an investigation upheld some of the bullying allegations made against him. The report said he had behaved in an aggressive and intimidating manner. He says a minority of those within Whitehall are effectively trying to block the government.
The vast majority of civil servants are fabulous. We can't achieve what we want in government without our officials. But the risk is a small cabal can block important reforms if hurt feelings because poor work or inadequate work is pulled up, or because more questions are asked than they feel comfortable with. And if ministers back off driving change forward, we won't be doing our job, which is, of course, not to serve civil servants and civil service, as important and as valuable as they are, but is to serve the British public.
Oliver Dowden's replaced Dominic Raab as the new Deputy Prime Minister. He'll also remain in his role as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. And Alex Chalk takes over as the new Justice Secretary, making him the 11th person appointed in that role since 2010. The Law Society, though, has warned he inherits an even worse justice crisis than any of his recent predecessors. Meanwhile, Labour Shadow Justice Secretary Steve Reid has attacked Dominic Raab's record in office, accusing him of leaving the criminal justice system in tatters, with Sir Keir Starmer criticising the Prime Minister over what he has called indecision and weakness in allowing Mr Raab to resign. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says he's going to court to stop the Royal College of Nursing strike at the end of the month. The RCN has planned industrial action from the 30th of April to the 2nd of May. NHS employers, though, say the mandate for strikes expires on the 1st of May. Pat Cullen, the RCN's General Secretary, has described it as a nakedly political move from a bullying government. The CBI suspended all policy and membership activity after dozens of the biggest names in British business quit the organisation after a fresh allegation of rape. John Lewis, NatWest, Jaguar Land Rover and BT are among those to pull out after a second woman made sexual allegations against the trade body. The CBI says it shares the shock and revulsion over the allegations, and it will put forward new proposals for members to decide on the future role and purpose of the organisation at an extraordinary general meeting in June. The Home Secretary's announced a number of amendments to the illegal migration bill, making it more difficult for domestic and international courts to block deportations. The Home Office says those arriving by unauthorised routes who are not at risk of death, persecution, torture or degrading treatment will be deported. The appeals will then be heard remotely. Suella Braverman says the amendments will help prevent last-minute bogus asylum claims. On TV, online, DAB and TuneIn Radio, this is GB News. But now, it's back to Mark.
It's Friday, thank God. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Tonight's newsmaker is legendary former England manager Big Sam Allardyce. Why is sport now being targeted by eco-warriors? And what is Big Sam's reaction? Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of the papers with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30. Plus, let's kick off with my take at 10. Not satisfied with banning wonderful songs like Swing Low's Sweet Chariot and Brown Sugar, or rewriting literary classics like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James Bond and Agatha Christie, the woke onslaught on human pleasure and joy has set its sights on the beautiful game of football, a sport enjoyed by millions of hard-working, ordinary Brits. The Guardian newspaper, which long ago stopped being the paper of the working class, have published an article in which they link the image of a ship on the official crest of both clubs, both Manchester United and Man City, as representing slave ships of the past. A story so tenuous it has provoked a rare unity between the two arch-rival clubs and their respective fans. For the snowflake generation and the censorious journalists, politicians and academics who fan the fires of division and confect so much of this rubbish, being offended about everything is the norm. And engineering this divisive nonsense, which seeks to shame everything about this country, is now an industry. In our increasingly mad world, which will have you believe the countryside, mathematics and even knitting are racist, political axe grinding is beginning to replace football as our national pastime. Slavery is the most shameful chapter in our history and the history of many other nations and empires. Horrific. And of course, slavery is ongoing across the world, which no one seems to care about. But this terrible human crime is being leveraged for political ends by a Britain-hating elite who dominate the media, corporations and our public institutions. These bullying and autocratic thugs will stop at nothing until all music, art, history and culture have been censored by the woke cult, who are a bunch of complete and utter cults. If they're going to take United and City to task, even though the boats on their badges are likely a reference to the Manchester Ship Canal, perhaps they should target Nottingham Forest for not doing more to tackle deforestation. Maybe the canary on the Norwich Strip is an insult to coal miners. Don't get me started on Arsenal and their image of the Gunners, which clearly promotes gun crime, pretty appropriate for North London these days. Leicester City clearly love fox hunting those brutes. How could they? The hornets on the Watford shirt are an insult to anyone that's ever been stung by a bee on holiday, very triggering. And what about the cockerel on the Spurs strip? Having to look at a cock like that all day long is bound to offend trans people. My message to those seeking to strip Manchester United and Man City of their iconic and venerated badges is a simple one. Get your dirty mitts off the beautiful game. It's time to show these attackers the red card and give them an early bath. Are you a City or United fan or just a fan of the Premier League? Let me know. Or the lower leagues. What's your view on this latest woke onslaught, this time focusing on football? Mark at gbnews.uk. Reacting to my take at 10, broadcaster and journalist Mike Parry, who of course co-founded TalkSport Radio. Political commentator Sam Dowler. Broadcaster and writer Stephanie Tecci. Well, let me start with you, Sam Dowler. Your reaction to these rather tenuous links between Man City's football strip and slavery?
Well, they are tenuous links. This is it's a Guardian writer's musings. I mean, we don't need to take them as read at all. Nobody's requested for this to happen. Both clubs have both said that they don't want it to happen. I mean, you look to the other side of the pond, for example, where they had the Washington Redskins and the Cleveland Indians, and rightly so. They changed their names, they changed their emblems. But this is, I mean, it's a little bit far-fetched. Again, as I say, this is one journalist's ideas. badges, and I think he's just putting it out. He or she is just putting it out there, as opposed to it should be something that should happen. I don't think anybody has felt offended by them. I mean, let's not. I mean, I do take umbrage with your casual use of the word woke, because obviously I'm not sure. You get exactly what it means or what it used to mean, but it isn't to do with trying to cancel anybody. It's to do with being aware of social injustice. And in this scenario with the badges, I don't think it's particularly relevant, and I don't think it's something that's going to last more than a couple of weeks.
Well, Sam, I take your point. I like what woke used to mean, but not anymore, because it's changed. Stephanie Tecci, I need some help with this story. Please, what are your thoughts?
Well, Mark, I'm a Man United fan, and of course I'm black. And I was none the wiser about...
you're red.
Oh, it depends what day it is. And I was none the wiser about these ships on these badges representing, the slave trade. And to be honest, I think it's a mockery that people try to link racism to a badge. Tackling racism is more than erasing badges. It's not the problem nor the solution. And I think it makes a mockery of people who have faced racism to bring up these trivial ideas. And the way we're moving as a society, the more sensitive we get, we're going to have no badges of honour left.
Can I just say as well that what you were saying, Steph, is akin to people saying that that drag queens are trying to sexualise children, etc., etc. It gives a pass to actual real paedophiles. So what Steph is saying about saying about the badges, it actually gives a pass to real racists. Yeah. Because when you discuss racism or paedophilia, there's no point lumping in a load of rubbish into it when there's actual real
cases.
problem and real cases.
Well, that's a really interesting point from Stephanie and Sam. What do you think, Mike? Does this row trivialise racism?
Isn't this the ultimate example of those who want to be offended in life trying to find something to be offended about? Isn't it? Do you know what? I spoke to a mate of mine who's a Manchester United fan when this story broke, and he said, I didn't know there was a ship on the badge of Manchester United.
Neither did I.
It's right along the top. It's so tiny you can't see it. Manchester United are the Red Devils, OK? So we know that devil's there, and we know there are, devil-like signs, but nobody knew, was it? I didn't know there was a ship on the Manchester City badge. It's absolutely outrageous that those who want to be offended have exhausted every other, area of life in which they can find offence and now turn it on club badges. What about, for instance, all the ones you've mentioned, Arsenal? They could be accused of being warmongers because they've got a cannon on their badge. Well, that's because they were founded at Woolwich Arsenal, south of the river, by the way, not north of the River Thames, and they were founded at a munitions factory. What about West Ham United? They're called the Hammers. And do you know why? There are two hammers like this on their badge, indicating they were founded in a factory that was employing thousands of working people to make hammers.
And the Hatters, and that Luton.
Is that going to be a put-down of working people, that working people shouldn't have supported West Ham United because they were making hammers and they were abused by industrial barons and put down as working-class people? It's absolutely outrageous. What about Derby County? They're known as the Rams. Does that mean we should have some fixation now about Derby County being cruel to animals like sheep?
I don't think anyone's going to take it seriously, to be honest with you. As I said, it's the musings of one journalist.
Maybe I'm unique, but Stephanie, I grew up in an atmosphere and in a culture in which racism was completely unacceptable and forbidden at school, in my social circles, at home. I remember once a boy made a racist remark at school and there was genuine shock. I don't think racism has been acceptable for a long, long time. When do you think this kind of trivial revisionism is going to stop? And as you say, we tackle actual prejudice?
It's sad, Mark, because at this moment where everybody is so sensitive, I don't think racism can be tackled because it's been overshadowed by silly stories like this.
Well, can I interrupt you? Has it been weaponised by Britain-hating campaigners, Stephanie, who just want to slag the country off, and dare I say it, most of them middle-class white journalists.
I was just about to say that, because you do not see black people kicking up a fuss like this, because our plight is way bigger than a badge, you know. So for them to try and make an issue and belittle us in this way, actually, The Guardian is not helping. We haven't asked for them to campaign for this for us. So if they really want to see what's going on, actually go out there and talk to the black community and see what the real issues of racism are. Because I have to admit, when it comes to football, we know racism exists, but it's been one of the industries that's been trying to tackle it more than any other industry at the moment.
Yeah, I wonder, Stephanie, are people of colour sick of being told that they're victims?
Big time. Big time. They don't even know what actually we deem as victimhood. So it means that when someone is actually saying, I've been through a racist encounter, no one takes us seriously anymore, because they're thinking about all these situations, thinking we've put our name to this and calling this as racism. Racism is a mindset.
Well, producer Maria, is Big Sam available? Let's just tear up the running order if I can, because I can't think of anyone better to speak to about this issue than one of the country's most respected former football managers. England, of course, Newcastle, West Ham, Bolton, you name it. He's had so much success, and he's with us now. Big Sam, before we get to our main chat after the break about eco-warriors and sport, your reaction to a threat to these iconic badges, which mean so much to millions of fans and represent decades of history.
Well, Mark, absolutely flabbergasted, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I wasn't sure what I was actually reading or listening to, and thinking, where has this all come from, of course? And of course, having coming on because I'm coming on your programme, I mean, looked at all the history that you could dig out through Google. Of course, it seems to be an absolute nonsense, of course, and I think that, as everybody else has suggested, that it's right down the wrong track of what we are all talking about and what we're all trying to achieve, of course. So somebody putting out a story, and unfortunately, should we be giving it the airtime that they were actually giving it? And that's the problem. They'll think they've succeeded by us talking about it, of course. But yet again, I suppose you have to come on and express your opinion and say, for me, an absolute nonsense. And of course, I'd have to say I'm a little disappointed in Andy Burnham, because Andy Burnham has come out and said it would be better if they were called bees. Well, for me, I have great respect for Andy Burnham, met him an awful lot, and there's more need to talk about the suicide that's going on in this country with youngsters, young men and women, than we are talking about a badge on a football club's crest.
I think you're right about that, Sam. And you know, as a former top manager, some of the biggest clubs in the world that you've managed, the Premier League football is wonderfully diverse, not just on the pitch, but in the stands as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, the diversity in football is probably the greatest industry in this country at the moment. I mean, we have and employ people from all over the world, not only as players, but also as coaches and managers, physios, masseurs, scouts, you name it. We employ every nationality, every race across the board. So it's a multiracial society, a multiracial platform that the Premier League is today.
Well, look, Big Sam, do stick around, because you are our newsmaker tonight. And after a short break, I'll be asking Big Sam why sport is being targeted by eco-extremists and what the gaffer thinks of that. That's next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive, because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a big reaction to the campaign by censors to get rid of the Manchester United and Man City official crest on their shirts, because there's an image of a ship on both clubs' emblem, which some people say is linked to slavery. This from Emily, who says, "Hi, Mark, what a complete nonsense. The woke brigade now want to take a ship off a well-known football team logo. Does that mean that we'll have to remove all ships off all logos now? It's completely rubbish, and it should all be stopped." This from Tarani, who says, "Mark, your pundit is right. As a brown woman, I've gone through enough to know to fight for the important and fundamental truths. Having said that the woke mob in Canada is always the white women who pretend to be kind to immigrants, blah, 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 on social media, but can't be nice to their immigrant neighbour right next door to them. Victim mentality does not come from dark-skinned people, because we fought enough to be thick-skinned, but it's time to speak the truth about our experience to counter the bullshit of the woke mentality." Thank you. Well, Tarani not pulling her punches, and I certainly won't be editing her words, because this show is the home of free speech, the home of diverse opinion, and the home of balance in all matters. So if you disagree with what has been said, and if you support these censors, if you think that the ship logo is a problem and should go, let me know. I'll give you a fair hearing. Mark at gbnews.uk. It's time now for the Newsmaker, in which we tackle a big story of the day in the company of a fearless commentator. Tonight, following the behaviour of eco-warriors at last weekend's Grand National and the World Snooker Championship in Sheffield, Just Stop Oil are threatening to cause chaos to this weekend's football fixtures and Sunday's London Marathon. So is the choice of sport as a target for these eco-campaigners a new low? Let's get the views of a man we spoke to just a moment ago, one of the most respected people in professional sport, former England, Newcastle, West Ham and Bolton manager Big Sam. First of all, Sam, your reaction to those pictures from the Crucible and the Just Stop Oil protester disrupting the World Championships?
Well, personally, I feel it's outrageous, of course. I mean, the Snooker World Championship is one that we all follow, and obviously it must be purely and simply that they think the audience is big enough for them to make a difference. But to actually disrupt the Snooker Championship at the Crucible, it's just unbelievable. What does it achieve? What does it gain? The publicity that they're looking for, not really. Is it directly affected? No. I just can't understand these people, why they are making these demonstrations and disrupting what has been a classic in sport in this country for many, many years. As is the horse racing, of course. You know, the Grand National is a tradition. Everybody who doesn't bet normally takes a little flutter when they get up on that weekend and say, who do I fancy on the Grand National? Every football club that I've been at, there would be a lottery draw, a couple of pounds a horse, just to see at the end of the game who.
Now, unfortunately, we've lost the line to Big Sam. We'll try to reconnect. But I completely agree with what Sam has said. And lots of people share the view that has been expressed. Colin says, Mark, is this slavery issue attacking the Portuguese government? That's in relation to the Man City and Man United badges, which apparently are linked to slavery. Big Sam is back. Sam, you've been censored there briefly. Another issue is that football, snooker, the Grand National, there are many hard-working Brits that pay good money to watch these events, and the disruption, therefore, is a big problem for them.
Well, I mean, why do we keep allowing this to happen? That's one of my concerns. I mean, I keep being bombarded about what I should think and what I shouldn't think, and how I should think, and I shouldn't have opinion about it if it's against what they're talking about or what they're demonstrating about. And I think that's very, very dangerous in this society at the moment. So the more airtime we're given, and we are talking about it, and I am here talking about it, and I wondered why I should be talking about it. Why should I be given the airtime? Why should I give him my time to actually talk about it? But yet again, there's only so much you can take. And of course, we are taking far too much, and we must put a stop to it. And the journalists who are giving them airtime, who are creating this problem, really should have a better understanding and a better responsibility for what they're actually putting in their papers.
Big Sam, before we let you go, who's going to win the Premier League?
Now then, Arsenal coming back from a 3-1 down today for a 3-3 again is tipping the scales towards Manchester City. But next Wednesday will be the clincher because Manchester City play Arsenal. And I think if Arsenal don't lose that game, they will win the title this season.
Gaffer, great to have you on the show as always. Truth bombs and common sense aplenty from Big Sam Allardyce, one of the most respected managers in the country, of course, top player as well back in the day. Big Sam Allardyce, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, folks, next up, we've got the papers at 10:30 sharp with full pundit reaction and some cracking stories. Don't go anywhere.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to Mark Dolan Tonight. It's exactly 10:30, which means it's time for the papers. Do you want to do one of those sting things? I'll get the hang of this one day. Yes, indeed, it is time for tomorrow's papers. 10:30 every Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of the papers. And let's start with the Daily Telegraph. They lead with the following. Row over Spanish forces in Gibraltar sank Dominic Raab. Deputy Prime Minister resigns after inquiry into bullying, upholds 2 complaints. Meghan wrote to Charles over racism concerns. The Duchess of Sussex expressed her concerns about unconscious bias in the royal family in a letter to the King. This a Telegraph exclusive. It's understood that the correspondence was sent in the wake of the March 2021 Oprah Winfrey interview in which the Duchess alleged that a member of the royal family had speculated about the colour of her unborn son's skin. A source has said that the Duchess feels she's not received a satisfactory response to her concerns, and that is believed to be one factor in her decision not to attend the coronation on May the 6th. So the Cold War between Hollywood and Windsor continues. Also, how about this jailed farmer was just looking after the land. And the CBI, Britain's biggest business lobby group, mothballed as businesses walk out. Let's have a look now at the Daily Mail. Was this the day Britain became ungovernable? Very much tying in with the theme of my big opinion. Dominic Raab claimed tonight it was becoming almost impossible for ministers to deliver for the British people. The top Tory said he'd been forced to quit as Deputy PM for hurting the feelings of civil servants. Also in an exclusive, Bobby Moore's 1966 World Cup winning shirts gone missing. Very sad news there for the Moore family. Daily Express forced out for wanting the best for Britain. That's Martin Brown, their deputy political editor, writing about Dominic Raab. And also, we miss you, ma'am. Kate, of course, the Princess of Wales' loving photo to mark the late Queen's birthday, which was today. I know she's up in heaven, but it won't stop me from saying happy birthday, Mom. I think she would have been 97, something of that ilk. God bless her. May she rest in peace. How about The Guardian now? Raab quits in fury. Justice Secretary resigns after a report into bullying finds he engaged in abuse of power and intimidated staff. Former Deputy PM accuses activist civil servants of trying to block the government's work. Also, CBI faces exodus of firms after new rape allegations scandal there in the world of business. The Eye weekend, Raab officials angry at tone-deaf resignation. Officials who worked under Raab hit back, telling the Eye the ex-Deputy PM is arrogant and playing the victim.
He's the victim.
Yes,
Oh my God, it's kicked off again. Well, we'll come to that shortly. Daily Star, the storm before the calm. Arctic winds will have us turning the central heating back on before we're hit with a 24-degree heat wave. Wow, how very British.
That's some weather report.
So -5 to +24. Welcome to stormy / sunny Britain.
Stormy definitely.
Those are your front pages. I've got more papers to come, but let's get reaction now from three absolute legends, my top pundits tonight. We have splashed the cash. Let's be honest, you get what you pay for. Broadcaster and journalist Mike Parry, political commentator Sam Dowler, and broadcaster and showbiz supremo Stephanie Tecci. I've got a simple question, which has actually already kicked off in debate with my pundits before we even started. Sam Dowler, is Dominic Raab a victim?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely
He's lost
not.
his job.
He's lost the plot, is what he's lost. He said initially that he would stand by whatever this report said, and the report said that of the 8 accusations, 2 of them have been withstanding, and
6 have not.
No, it doesn't. That's not what I'm saying.
6 have not.
Too many.
I'm speaking. It's too. 1 is too many. So he is not a victim. They've upheld the.
What about an apology? What happened to forgiveness?
Yeah, no, what happened to an apology from him? Look,
you snowflake.
You
snowflake.
Don't give me that, because that's what Jacob Rees-Mogg said as well. Oh, these are snowflaky.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
Yeah.
We don't know the situations. We don't know the staff. We don't know the staff.
You're not doing your job properly. You have to be
spoken to. What would have liked to have seen was some sort of retribution from Dominic, like I said to Steph before, maybe saying I'm sorry if you felt that I was bullying
some
you.
contrition.
You don't mean retribution.
I don't mean retribution.
No.
I mean some sort of contrition, like you say. And he hasn't done any of that. And all he's done is further the Tory party's view of looking like they're completely out of touch with the British people. You're not allowed to say certain things to your staff in the rest of the country, and yet he's allowed to. No, and he can't even have the balls to come back and say, maybe in those 2 situations that they've upheld, maybe I was out of order in those 2 situations, but he hasn't even said that. It's poor me.
Is Dominic Raab a victim?
Right. The villain in this piece, which we haven't even mentioned yet on this show in 2 hours, is Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Weakest decision he's ever made in his life.
He didn't make a decision.
Of many weak decisions.
If anything, he saved him.
You might have called Dominic in and said, by the way, Dominic, to save my skin and yours, just in case in the future you can come back, why don't you step outside Downing Street and just resign? The weakest decision that Rishi Sunak's made.
What would you have wanted him to do, Mike?
Excuse me. I was getting to like Rishi Sunak. I thought he was being strong on his policies, standing up and defending the policies, even though some of them were clearly going to fail, like the boats and all that kind of stuff. But it's all right. But he should have supported Dominic Raab. I mean, the Telegraph...
How does he defend a bully, though?
Yeah, exactly.
Hang on. The Telegraph lead actually gets to the kernel of it all. That was about a row about a civil servant when we were trying to do a deal with Spain about Gibraltar in the EU, and he said a civil servant went flaky on him, was not doing what he'd asked him to do to uphold the interests of the United Kingdom, so he didn't sack him, he moved him aside and brought somebody else in.
And the deal was done in the early hours of the morning.
And the deal went through. I think it was New Year's Eve, and it went through in the early hours of the morning. So Dominic Raab insisted on trying to get it done. It's an outrage. I like the Daily Mail because I tell you why. Was this the day Britain became ungovernable? Do you know why? Because if the civil servants, the civil service, start running this country, it then becomes, Mark, doesn't it, just like Europe. Unelected people running our lives. That's what Europe is all about. Unelected commissioners running our lives. Civil servants are not elected, Sam. They're not elected.
Don't you think they have the right to not be treated like scum in their workplace? Do you don't think they have the right to request that? Please,
there's no evidence that happened.
There is. The report just come out and it's upheld 2 of the bullying claims.
You've just used explosive language. You said treated like scum. There is no evidence of that in this report whatsoever. A couple of them, one of them said, I felt I was being bullied because when Dominic went round the room and congratulated everybody on a good job, he left me out. Is that bullying?
Or is that
Excuse me?
honesty?
Or is it demeaning?
Is that bullying?
It's demeaning. More than anything.
Supposing he forgot.
Not a sackable offence, Stephanie Tetchy. I mean, a reason why many of my viewers and listeners are angry, and it's very clear on email, is that they see Dominic Raab as someone that was there delivering the will of the people. That he was trying to make a success of Brexit, support Braverman, stop the boats,
which he's
potentially tear up the Convention on Human Rights.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
And of course,
a good idea.
potentially some other, major changes within his department.
But that doesn't take away how he's treated his civil servants in numerous occasions.
Well, how has he treated them, Steph?
No, it's not how you get things done. Because
Let Stephanie speak.
As I've said before, there is no I in team. So while you might get your goals done, if your team feels deflated, depressed, full of anxiety, is that really a job well done?
No.
It's a job well done maybe for society, but not for your core team.
Perceived resistance to government policy from the civil service? What about in the Home Office with posters on the notice board saying all illegal immigrants welcome, except that is not the policy of this government?
Well, that's the thing.
Or this country. Or the voters of this country. The voters of this country do not want open-door immigration. But apparently the civil servants of the Home Office do.
Let's not forget that Brexit was pushed over the line by Boris's lies. Let's not forget that.
By his political
So you're now insulting... You're now insulting the 17.4 million people who voted for Brexit.
Yes, and
keep insulting them,
and
Sam.
also it was a tiny difference percentage between, yes and no. And it was pushed over the line.
It was a majority.
If it wasn't for Boris's lies, if it wasn't Boris's lies about the NHS and about everything else, which has not come to fruition, then then we would still be in the EU. So I think it's a shocker. I think it's an absolute shocker.
You have a very forgiving nature, which is why we love you. I wonder though, just a word of defence for Raab.
Yeah.
He has taken one for the team by resigning, hasn't he?
He has.
Lesser personalities would have clung on, and he hasn't.
Well, it's all about integrity for the Conservative Party right now, and they're failing quite
through that one.
Sorry.
I do the gags.
Yeah, sorry. And they're failing quite miserably on this. And see it this way, we've got an election next year. Rishi Sunak needs people who are of integrity, who are respected by both their team and both by the public. And Dominic has failed on this occasion.
No, but fair play, though, Michael, I think, to Raab for resigning. He's no longer Deputy Prime Minister.
He should never have been put in the position.
No, but what does it tell us about him as a guy? I think it reflects well on him.
But he was forced. He was forced to do that.
Of course he was.
And obviously, when you see these interviews, he's still trying to make himself look like the good guy in this, that. He's actually, he's been the one that's been bullied.
In the past, others have said, you'll have to sack me, and he hasn't done that. He's proved himself, Dowler, he's proved himself to be a team player.
Well, this is all to have a comeback in the future.
And it's exactly what...
It's all about his comeback.
It's exactly what he isn't.
Sunak, to me,
when he's trying to make excuses for I've not really bullied about it. Oh, it's snowflakey. They've done this. They've said this. Oh, it's all about some sort of shadowy civil servant government.
Has created
nonsense.
A lethal missile in Dominic Raab, but he's so angry and so furious that he's been the fall guy for a few moaning minis inside the civil servant. He's going to come back strong.
I think we need to cut through the old business here and say that the Tories aren't fit for purpose. There needs to be a general election. There needs to be a completely new government. I mean, if you look at
who told you all that?
Listen to me. If you look at the revolving door of even the staff in the Tory party, even at the top, even at the premiership,
maybe you should invite Jeremy Corbyn back.
There's been no change at the top of the Labour Party for many years. You've got Keir... whatever you think about Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's trustworthy, it's stable, and that's what they're showing us.
And the thing is, Mike, all these situations just take away from the politics which they should be actually handling.
Of course they do.
And it's been drama after drama with the Conservative Party. We can't go more than 2 weeks without a different scandal popping up. How are we tackling the problems in this country?
A lot of the reason why it's been drama after drama is because the civil servants utterly refused.
Stop blaming the backline of people,
utterly refused to carry out government policy.
Why can't we blame the politicians that we're trusting to do the job? Why can't we?
One at a time.
4,000 European laws need to be scrapped off the order book, OK? How many have been done so far? About 30, because the civil servants won't get going. And what's more, it's another story tonight about the House of Lords. When it gets to the House of Lords, they don't want it either. It's outrageous. Democracy is being usurped in this country, Democracy is being usurped.
It comes down to the bottom line. Like, it's all very well that we can say, like, oh, shadowy civil servants, etc. Like, you know, nothing would have gone past the line with not Theresa May, with Liz Truss, with, you know, Kwasi Kwarteng. Like, nothing would have gone past the line unless they had said so. So you cannot blame the civil servants for all of that. They made their own mistakes.
Well,
Dominic Raab made his own mistake. They are the people at the top.
Mike and Sam, today it's Dominic Raab. In another 2 weeks, he'll be another MP who's done another scandal.
And he'll be firing bullets, believe me.
It's funny that
and I'll be behind it.
Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss, because there are plenty of people who take the view that it was the Treasury who actually usurped that particular administration and the so-called mini-budget. They threw
whinged to the IMF. Whinged directly to the IMF.
There you go. Look, history will tell on that one. I've got lots more coming up, including more front pages, including the Times newspaper with a fascinating headline. Also, the joys of the middle aisle at Aldi, which is always a pleasure in my view. And my panellists will be nominating their headline heroes and back page baddies. All of that's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's the papers in the company of three top pundits, broadcaster and journalist Mike Parry, political commentator Sam Dowler, and showbiz supremo Stephanie Tecci. We've got the Times now hot off the press, courtesy of Meskana and Maddie. And let's have a look at what we've got here. It is the Times. Raab goes down swinging. He blames tyranny of hurt feelings after resigning as Deputy PM over bullying inquiry. We'll, I'm sure, return to that story in the days ahead. But let's get to a great example of celebrities being put in their place. Twitter's blue tick, if you don't know, is a way of verifying the accounts of the rich and famous. But last year, the new boss, Elon Musk, described the verification process as a lords and peasants system. And now he's culled it for those unwilling to pay a fee of £8 a month. So is it good to see celebrities treated finally as ordinary citizens? Stephanie.
I love it. We are all now one big Twitter family without a blue tick, unless you pay £8 a month.
So it means that everyone on Twitter's the same. There's no little logo next to famous people.
No, unless they pay £8, which we know, Mark, is nothing to celebrities who are worth millions. But one thing I know, having interviewed loads of celebrities, is they've got egos.
And now this is star envy.
Yeah,
star
envy.
It is.
It's a notch down for their egos. But to be honest, most of these Twitter profiles, their social media profiles, are run by their marketing team. So maybe celebrities do not care as much. And if you want to find who the real Slim Shady is, it's because you're already a fan.
You're already a fan.
Yeah.
Listen, I do love the fact that Elon Musk, who's the boss of Twitter, he's restored free speech to the platform, Sam, but also he's been mocking and trolling Stephen King, who, of course, is a famous best-selling horror writer.
He's also said that he's going to pay for his blue tick. Like,
Elon's already paid for him.
I have to say, I look at my Twitter today and I have lost my blue tick, which I had before.
You had such a lovely tick.
Yes, I know. Everyone loves my tick. It's a big tick.
Special tick.
How's your tick?
But can I just say that? I mean, it is sort of like Elon Musk, like, you know, leveling the playing field.
Yeah.
I do understand it, but he's also like taking away he's taken away a certain amount of safeguarding for trans people, for example, to say that it's okay now that you can dead name somebody and I get it. I get free speech, but like every time I appear on GBNews, for example, like especially when I talk about trans stuff, I get called a groomer, a paedophile, a misogynist.
That's just by the security guard.
And that's just by you, Mark.
That's not on.
But in seriousness, that is what Twitter has become. It's become a cesspit for people to be allowed to say whatever they want, and I don't think that's right.
If we've all lost our blue ticks, I've lost mine as well.
I didn't have
You've lost a lot more than that, mate.
Yeah.
Marbles for starts.
It's a bit harsh. If we've lost our blue ticks, then the worth of a blue tick is worthless, because if everybody's lost it, it doesn't matter if you've got a blue tick.
You're right.
Because nobody's got one. So, thank you, Elon Musk. What a fantastic guy, by the way. He sat there yesterday, watched his £2.4 billion rocket take off, watched it blow up 4 minutes later, and then just said, that was a very good launch.
Is there any point to space exploration, Michael?
I don't believe so, but scientists will tell me that the Earth's eventually going to run out. We've got to go and live somewhere else. That's why they want to do it.
We are a spacefaring people, the human beings, and I think that our future is in space. I think it's on Mars. I think it's on the moon. I think
it's on Earth.
I think it's the final frontier.
And I don't believe we are alone in the universe. I think that it will.
No, we're not.
I think we need to.
In our lifetime, we will see some sort of.
Darling, I love you, but I think we need to care about the planet which we're on. All this money they're spending to go in space that could feed lots of people. They're wasting all this money to go into space for what?
Well, Stephanie, I've got an idea. Let's send Sam and Mike.
I don't think they will last a minute.
We can appropriate the moon.
They can FaceTime. Now, listen, let's talk briefly, if we can. Samantha Cameron, wife, of course, of former Prime Minister David Cameron.
Yeah.
I have to remind David to avoid the middle aisle at Aldi. Mike, can you think of a greater innovation than the famous middle aisle at Aldi? For those that don't know, it's full of odds and ends, unpredictable items like lawnmowers, fleece jackets, Wellington boots, screwdrivers.
Can I explain my total ignorance? I have no idea what the middle...
Neither do I.
I do. What are you talking about?
I have never shopped at
Michael.
Aldi. I have never shopped at Lidl. I am such a patriot They're both owned by
German
companies.
Is that why you don't shop at them?
No.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Because when I want bird's eye fish fingers, I know if I go into Tesco's, I can get bird's eye fish fingers. If I go into Aldi and Lidl, it's other fish fingers.
Which you will get for, like, excuse me, it's cost of living crisis is exactly what Aldi's all about. You go there and you get fish fingers.
But you don't get bird's eye fish fingers.
No, because
but how do you know the fish fingers?
Bird's eye fish fingers are no different.
We need to get to your.
You basically.
People are
paying less because they need to pay.
You really do.
We need to get to your headline heroes. Is there anything you've bought in the middle aisle that was memorable?
I've never been into Aldi.
Oh my God, you've not.
There you go.
Yes, I bought a squashy, one of those squashy rugs.
Each their own.
Lovely.
I bought so many things.
Gave them to my dog.
I've got a high visibility jacket for when I'm on my bicycle. I've got a kid's helmet, the lot.
With a registration, I hope.
Probably right. You're right. Well done, Aldi. I love the middle aisle. It's time now for our headline heroes and back page baddies. Stephanie, in a sentence, who have you got?
My headline hero is the Princess of Wales, because I find it so sweet that she remembered the Queen, our late Queen, on her birthday. And you always need that. If you've lost someone, it's always touching to remember them on their birthday. And as a nation, we all felt like we lost our grandma. So today is her day. It's still her day.
And she's a great photographer as well.
Yeah.
Sam, your headline hero?
My headline hero is Charlize Theron, who has... who's gone on record, and she's appearing in a telethon in the US to talk about how drag is not a crime.
And she's a very talented actress, isn't she?
She's a very talented actress, and she's a South African, and she's a wonderment, and and that's exactly what the Americans need right now when it comes to their nonsense drag rules, which is happening at the moment.
OK, fair enough. How about you, Mike, your headline hero?
Prince William, the Prince of Wales. Did you see that video clip of him in the Indian dress?
You're right.
Yeah,
and it wasn't staged. I've checked it out to make out with his PR people. Did you get somebody to call in? No. He picked up the phone. Hello. Oh, you were booked for 2:30, but you want to come at 2:15? I think we can get a table for you. What I can't understand is why the guy on the other end of the phone, or the lady, didn't work out. This sounds very much like Prince William. But you wouldn't, would you, if you ran an Indian restaurant in Birmingham?
It was a
Prince William. But he was so natural.
He's a great guy.
I thought
he's a great guy, and he does a mean biryani. I've only got a couple of seconds for your back page baddies. Stephanie.
Alec Baldwin.
Actor.
How dare he continue to film Russ, knowing that a woman's life
has been lost? He's
going to finish the film, try and make a success after a mother is now lying in her grave because of his mistake.
Because he
has no integrity. Because he accidentally shot.
Sam Dowler, your back page baddie.
I have to say that it wasn't his mistake. It was the mistake of the.
Well, that's the great debate. How about who have you got?
It's Elon Musk because he frigging took my blue tick away today.
Fair enough.
I'm
furious. Good shout. Michael, your back page baddie.
Lord Carlisle, KC, one of the leaders of the people in the House of Lords, unelected people who are trying to once again stummify government legislation.
Brilliantly put. I can't disagree with Michael. Loved my panel tonight. Most importantly, loved you for your company. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. We'll do it all again tomorrow from 9. Headliners is next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Doobs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that